But with her big dumb face, the longest opening sequence.
It's all this midlife crisis.
Oh my god, it's so good, guys.
We're not told that. Yeah, we do. We're not told that. It is written. It is written. Hello.
Hello.
I'm actively trying to unmute you guys, and then you end up. There you go. You re-mute yourself.
What's going on?
What's up, dudes? How do you feel after watching one of the most depressing movies of the year?
I hate you.
Yeah,
It was fun. It was like
much.
Rambo, but less like shooting.
it was Taken and Rambo and I haven't seen Candy, but it's just
And
like the first
Passion of
pedophile
Christ.
movie to There's Jesus was there. Jesus running around with guns.
Passion of the
Louise.
Christ.
AK1.
Yeah. Right.
Mhm. Passionate man, that Jim Caviezel. Very passionate man.
Jim
I don't know.
Caviezel.
He is indeed.
So wait.
Have you watched any?
His
interviews
acting
with
in
him?
his post credits was more impressive than his acting in the film.
What?
He was so flat
That's the
throughout
best
this
thing I've
movie.
ever heard.
Everyone
say-
else did a great job. I don't know about his performance.
I will say it's. I do think that I've seen a lot of interviews with him, and I don't think he's the most articulate. He immediately brings to mind those like I don't even know if there's a real life example, but it's like whenever actors are made fun of in comedies or something where it's I'm just the tool. I need somebody to give me the words, and you give him words, and I think he's an incredible actor.
I don't like those words.
But when you leave it to him, he doesn't. I don't know. I watched a couple interviews where he seems like he's older now, but he seems like he's on drugs or something. But then again, he'll tell the story about how making Passion of the Christ, he got hit by lightning and he almost died 17 times. So it's like maybe he's kind of,
Is that a true story?
Maybe he got hit by lightning.
he got hit
He's
by
just
lightning.
very-
So
he's
maybe
very
his
sick.
brain is a little, who knows? Who knows?
All right. Let's get this.
He was
meeting
touched
of the-
by God, fellas. So let's give him
All
a
right.
break.
And the right way?
You're saying
Or the wrong?
show us on the doll where God touched you.
Stop.
Okay.
I hate you.
McCurdy is tired because he's been day jobbing it hardcore lately. So we'll help him out. We'll just get right to it. Except that
Sweet.
I left Audacity closed. So give me 1 second, fellas. Okay. Sound of See, I already messed it up because we're in a hurry. Sound of Freedom is a difficult movie to watch, not because it is poorly produced, quite the opposite, in fact, but because it is about the international issue of human trafficking, specifically that of children, a problem that is certainly not new and has been going on since the beginning of time. This movie does my favorite thing in the world. It shoves the darkness of humanity into the faces of those who would rather turn a blind eye and puts the audience in the difficult position of asking themselves that if they could do something about this problem, would they? Tim Ballard, played by Jim Caviezel, who's excellent as always, regardless of what Nance may have just said, is a professional pedophile hunter who quits his job as a Homeland Security agent in order to rescue kidnapped children in Central and South America. We'll talk about what's fact and what's fiction, but as far as the quality and tone of this film, see what I'm saying, fellas? We'll talk about what's fact and what's fiction, but as for the quality and tone of this film, it's not the rah-rah America USA chanting frat boy right-wing Fox News QAnon conspiracy theorist propaganda fantasy the establishment media has claimed it to be. In fact, there's nothing political about it whatsoever, but is rather the simple story of a single man having the courage to do the right thing at whatever the cost, and you should go see it and courageously face this darkness yourself. But go ahead, Nance. I want to hear before McCurdy
line
goes.
delivery is hard.
Is it just you mean because he's said in interviews, and I'm not trying to give him a pass, but he's said in interviews that he tried to play Tim Ballard with a certain amount of innocence. Are you reading that innocence as flat?
I don't know.
Because it's a guy dealing with
so
like
much
the
of him,
worst
and he's just
fucking
like,
thing possible, and he's
yeah.
like the one of the best shots of the movie is where he's because it's his job, he has to watch child porn. Can you imagine being forced to watch child porn?
Yeah.
And he's just sitting there crying, and who wouldn't be? Like Most people would
Yeah.
just be like, I quit and I'm out. I'm leaving. But he's like, I have to do this. And then he even
Undoubtedly,
uses
though,
that
like
to trick that one guy. He's like, I've watched so much
a
of it. I
different
want to live
actor
it
would do
now.
better.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay. Anyway, McCurdy, what you got?
What
up?
do we have? All
What you
right.
got?
Your favorite thing. Your favorite thing.
Oh God, don't.
Huevos.
Oh, okay.
It's huevos.
I just feel weird.
My
Hey,
favorite
hey.
thing is huevos.
I just feel weird showing it to
I
this.
like
I didn't
balls.
even do a Chucky rants for this one, guys. I was just so like, I'm not.
Yeah,
doing
let's
it
just move
today.
on. Just move on.
Just move on. Just
Buy a T-shirt if you like, but otherwise.
All right. Sound of Freedom, directed by Alejandro Monteverde. Is that like Mount? Is that like Green Mountain? Monte Verde. Is that
Green Mountain, Monteverde, yeah,
Green Mountain? Monteverde.
I believe so.
Written by Rod Barr and Alejandro Monteverde. And let's talk about the true story of sorts of this movie. So let's just
Lord.
start off with what we see on the poster. That good old thing that brings us to the theater based on a true story. Was it a true story? Well, sort of. Tim Ballard was this, who is the focus of sorry, you're right, Charlie. It is hard. You gotta words. They're hard.
Usually
Tim
we
Ballard,
take 5 minutes to just catch up and chat and hang out
Yeah.
and chill out, but
Just-
we're being rushed.
we're
I don't
being
feel rushed.
We're being rushed because the moment we started talking about this, black helicopters descended on my house,
Right.
and they've already assaulted my dog, and my grandma keeps calling me, so I feel rushed.
I just want to.
Charlie, are you okay?
As
There's
soon as
men
we end this
outside
stream,
my
we're
window
gonna go
taking
play
pictures
games.
of
All
me.
right, so Tim Ballard was this film's focuses on is in real life a former Homeland Security investigator who quits his job, like we see in the film, around 2012, then went to foreign countries to work with local police to rescue children and adults who have become victims of human sex trafficking. He also began his own organization, Operation Underground Railroad, a non-for-profit created to fight, again, sex trafficking. However, there's a lot that isn't exactly accurate to this story. For instance, the brother and sister who are sold into human trafficking never happened specifically. It was and I'm speculating, but I'm just putting my 2 cents into this one. It was probably made so that the audience could empathize more with the story, because I do feel like when you're talking about large numbers of children, that's not. I mean,
It helps to hammer home the whole like ripping families apart.
Yeah, because like if you just say, "Oh, it's just a bunch of children and this happens," you're like, "Okay,"But then
What
you actually
part,
like,
though?
cares?
it's like
What part is
those 2
accurate
kids
of those
don't
2
actually
kids?
exist. There was never like there's a lot of embellishment in this story. So like
There
those
was
2
never
kids,
like the Agera
there was never like now
brother sister.
now again, like I'm saying, is like those 2 kids never existed. There wasn't like this specific father that he was trying to find the mother and sister. So basically, what is the core of the story?
No, the
if
kids
you will, like,
existed. Are you saying they didn't exist?
those 2 kids, the brother and sister, did not exist in the story.
Those 2 kids are
Those
real.
kids-
Those 2 kids exist. Those 2 kids
From what I
were
read, it wasn't
What
that
were
they
their names?
existed.
and recovered. Miguel and Rosia or whatever. That's
What I read,
that's
it didn't
true.
say they existed. But anyway,
Yeah,
yeah.
the
So
girl
what I
was
read, it
the girl was
wasn't they were
returned after
existed.
24 hours. It wasn't this like long, prolonged
Yeah.
Taken-esque thing. But that's one of the true parts, is that these kids actually exist.
Well,
And they actually
okay,
gave
I would
him,
love
that
to hear more
pendant and
about that
everything.
actual
But, okay,
story.
anyway,
if it's
he-
true.
okay, if that's true, then maybe I got my information wrong then. But it was
It's going to
probably
be a
made-
lot of
I'm
weird
just saying again-
misinformation with this movie. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But Go
Right.
ahead.
Okay. So Ballard never went into the jungle of Colombia by himself to rescue a girl or kill anybody. So that part, the entire third act of the movie is very highly fictionalized.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
Vampirio,
big.
that part is like very much like that's over.
I was
and
hoping he
over.
would
We
just find
gotta
a
have
gun
some
and
action.
mow
Again,
them
like
all down while they're sitting
I'm
around the
gonna say
bonfire.
like this is again.
Yeah.
It's
Get to the
just-
chopper, like we
everyone
gotta
out of
have
there,
some
but-
get to the chopper here,
Yeah, this
Yeah.
movie is like it's still a movie. I mean, even like when we talk about the Tetris movie, or we talked about what's another one that was like based off a real life.
We talked about
Like
Air, where I
Tetris-
was like, lie to me. This movie's
Right.
boring. Lie to me a
Right.
little bit to make it not boring. Tetris did that. It lied to us, but it only lied to give us a good ending. But like the core of the story is true. And then I kind of weighed that up against something like Straight Outta Compton, where when they lie to us, it's damaging to society as we know it. So there's a difference there between like what happened here for real and let's give it a little life, which you should do, because this movie wouldn't be successful if you didn't give it a little life. But like the kids being real, that's important. You know, that's a very important thing. But even if those kids were fake, like let's say they're lying,
but like
those kids never,
I read
listen,
again,
though,
like,
those kids never
existed.
existed. At least you still have plenty of video evidence and tons of documentation that this guy, maybe those two kids, I'm saying hypothetically, if those two kids didn't exist, thousands of other kids exist that this guy is
no
saying.
that was my point originally when you told me, before you told me like they did exist. My point is that even if they didn't exist, I believe that like if you're writing a story like this, it's better to have something specific because you can actually care about, like if I tell you, like, you know, it's like that joke where it's like, oh, you know, 400 people and a clown died in a plane, and you're like, in a clown, you know, like people are going to be more interested in the one thing because that's very specific. But if you,
when you just give statistics, it's like,
people,
hey, 1 million people died yesterday, and you go,
right,
that's just a number. But if you put a face to it, suddenly it's like, oh
my
God,
I'm just trying to make I'm just trying to make the distinction as like, regardless.
I just think you hate children. What is you?
I have them.
No, just kidding. You just hate Goldfinger.
I just did a quick Google search.
A quick Google
it search. Happens to be, I'm just clicked the first link, and it happens to be on a website called Down the Hobbit Hole blog. Miguel Aguilar
That's
is
mine.
a real boy.
That's my blog.
Whom, oh, okay. A real boy whom Tim helped rescue while working as an HSI special agent. He did give Tim the necklace, but it wasn't Miguel's sister, whom Tim was attempting the big red. This is a horribly written thing. While Miguel does have a real life sister, it's based on a different girl named Gardy.
Yeah, so that was the other thing I did read, and I didn't write this down in my notes, but the other thing I did read was that he had two different instances that he basically kind of combined. So there was one mission that he had that was in Colombia and one that was in Haiti. And because he didn't want to have to do both for time, like they kind of combine certain elements together. It doesn't, again, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because this film is
have a
still
question.
Like
it might not be something you can answer.
Right.
It's like, so he quits his job and he goes in, right? And his first thing is this massive 54 kid save. Is that how it worked? You would think he would like slowly
120 kids. This is here's the thing. I didn't think this movie was great as much as Charlie wants to say it was. I have
guys, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yes,
we are. But
I just want to know true versus
that.
false. Like,
right. It was actually 120 kids. It wasn't 54.
Well, okay.
So
in just that one thing.
What's you guys from the fucking get go? Since I sent you guys this trailer, you think this is the greatest thing? I never given my
said
opinion.
You thought it was the greatest thing.
McCurdy just did. So
well, yeah,
but
you were like
assumption?
Saying it's very well produced. And I'm like,
what's your assumption? It is compared to the like you guys. One of you, I think it was Nan, said this movie looks like plain. This movie's going to be plain. This movie is far from plain. Just objectively, it's like slickly produced.
Better than plain, and
it doesn't come across as like the typical like Christian produced. God's not dead. Everything's horribly put together. This is a professionally produced film. Undoubtedly, that'd be my point in saying that, because everybody's like assuming that it's going to be like something. There's scenes where it's like I just got the message from QAnon. President Obama has the kids and we got to save them from they're in Congress right now. It's not that at all. No. It's just a story. It's no different from Taken. But nobody gave a shit about Taken because Taken didn't have a message at the end that was like, hey, guess what? This story's true, whereas this one does. So it's got everybody
of Taken,
stabbing each other in the fucking face.
Hold on. Let me just go finish all of my bits for real quick, guys, on just the
please.
Things at least that I read that were true versus not true. So Vampiro, who's played by Bill Camp, is based off a real person who went by Batman. So they had to obviously change it for legal reasons, probably. For the name, but yeah, I guess he went by Batman, and he is based off a real person. However, that individual in the story, in the movie, they embellish this thing where he slept with an underage girl and didn't realize it. That part didn't actually happen. He slept with but it was somebody who was trafficked. They were an adult, but I guess that person had a daughter who was also becoming trafficked. So that was that actually was more of his motivation. It wasn't what was in the movie necessarily. So again, like these things are sort of inspired, but not exactly like it's not one to one. Like this
You're
didn't.
talking
Not all
about
of this
the
movie actually
ex-cartel
happened.
guy that was
Yeah.
supposedly buying people to free them? He had a daughter
Now-
that was being
It wasn't
trafficked?
his daughter. It was this woman he had slept with. It was a prostitute he had slept with. Now that prostitute wasn't like, because in the movie you find out like he sleeps with this
Okay, I
woman and then
gotcha.
he finds out that she's way younger than he thought, and he wanted to kill himself, and that was his
Yeah.
motivation. That
Yeah.
part of the story didn't actually happen. It was like he had slept with somebody who was an adult, and then he found out that she had a daughter, and that daughter was being exposed to being sex trafficked. So that's what motivated him. So it's a little complicated. I mean, I think it's like, if you want to give that character's motivation, it's like that's a little convoluted. So like, how do we simplify it, even make it even more at stakes kind of thing? Ballard was involved with Operation Triple Take, where he and local law enforcement rescued over 120 individuals with several arrests. And we see that at the very end of the movie, there's like all that footage of him actually
That's
at
a
that
lot of
island.
kids.
And
I
all
wonder
that
if
stuff.
they reduced it to 50, because 120 is like
Well,
almost
some of
They
them-
unbelievable.
may
so the
have done it
movie
because
really
there were adults. They
the
in
movie
reality there were kids
emphasizes
and
the children.
adults. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. The movie emphasizes children a lot in this film, and it's like, yes, that's the thing that kind of drives everybody's, it pulls everybody's
Anyone getting
heartstrings, but, like,
trafficked is bad,
but it's
regardless of
also
the age.
adults that are getting trafficked.
But
so that, like,
if you
it
focus
could,
in on
much more
children,
innocent and all that.
Yeah.
people are
But
going to
it
get a
could
lot more
easily have
pissed
been-
off if it's kids.
Right, but it easily could have been, at the same time, Charlie. I mean, it could easily have been kids that had grown up and now they are of age, but they're basically prostitutes that were trafficked into that.
Which
that
guaranteed
profession.
guaranteed that's the reality of it. Is
So,
I would
so there
I would
were-
assume that that's the case, but because they're
Right.
like what like. The moment that a kid grows up, but beyond 12, they just kill them. No, there's like the big thing too is
Usually
that they
they
focus
become
in
like
on
the trainers almost, right?
yeah, but they focus in specifically on sex slaves. But these kids can also be sold for labor. You can also harvest their organs. Like these are human beings. Like you can't just grow human beings Matrix style. You have to if you want to black market a liver, you have to have a human being to do that. So that's the thing. That's why this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, because somebody needs a liver. How do you get a liver? And how do you got to pay big for that. So there's a lot of money in harvesting human beings, and it's not just for sex, but they hone in on children and sex slavery because that's the stuff that really pisses people off the most.
Right. So yeah, my whole bit was like, so this film isn't actually like again, the movie's poster says it's based off this incredible true story, and it's
every based off a true story
like,
movie should have that. Every single one of them should have based on a true story, sort of. There's something about this movie in particular that will have people being like, well, it's not totally true. Whereas they'll watch Straight Outta Compton and be like, every bit of it is true. Dre never went to jail. He never beat women.
No.
And everybody's racist,
I don't think you can say that.
Say what?
That people saw Straight Outta Compton and thought all of it was true.
They do, though. Nobody scrutinizes
Not
it.
everyone.
Based on a true
there's
story.
a lot of people that scrutinize
the
that
majority.
Movie.
No, the majority of people
there's
are
a
not.
lot of people I know who's like, yeah, that it was an entertaining movie, but there's a lot of stuff they get wrong, or they gloss over things.
Well, anyone
and mainly, and
that
they do it also
those are
in
exceptions.
that film. They also did it in Queen, where
those people are
Bohemian Rhapsody.
exceptions. Anybody questioning a movie is an exception compared to the millions of people who see it. Like if you make a movie about something, the fact or fiction, it all just becomes fact.
Yeah, and a lot of people would watch this and believe it's 100% true.
Yeah, totally.
That's I think my point about that is just when you see on the poster and it says based off the incredibly true story, and people take that as like this thing is completely true, and that's the type of stuff that I get like I roll my eyes at.
And I agree, but it depends. Like that's why I said before, I was like, whenever we talked about this with Air, we talked about this with Tetris, where I'm like, every movie, it should be required by law for them to have a website that's like, here's what's real and here's what's not real. That should be
Yeah.
fucking
Or like during
required.
the credits.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
Let us
did you
tell
enjoy
you
the movie? Okay,
exactly.
here's, we didn't actually get almost arrested by cops, really racist cops outside of the recording studio. We made that up because we wanted to increase the amount of racism out there. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, if people saw
Yeah.
that, they'd go, oh, okay. But instead they're like, see, racism bad, or it's the worst. It's the number one threat. It's like, is it though? Or is the movie playing into that? My point being that it's hard to find the truth of any given based on a true story. And for some reason, like, we kind of did this with Tetris, but like, there's something about a movie like this where people are going to want to scrutinize it even more, is my point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Next slide.
Just moving on real quick. Next slide. Just ding. Is that what we're doing?
Bing.
We've got Alejandro.
No, Bing. I think it was Bing.
Bing. Yeah. Bing.
It was Bing.
Alejandro Monteverde. This isn't his first film. He's actually done 2 others. And then I think if you guys watch, I don't know if in your theater if this was the same way, but like, and I kind of put this in a little bit, but the studio that has brought this film, Angel Studio, they're I looked at their stuff. It didn't say like they were faith-based, but they're based out of Utah, which kind of tells me they considering
called
who
Angel.
Tim Ballard is.
They are. I
It's
looked
like-
into how they came
McCurdy,
about.
I will say, I thought I left in time for the movie to get there
Yeah.
after the trailers, like Charlie typically does. But instead, I got
Right.
there early, like I usually do. And I got so many Angel Studio trailers. And
Yeah, that's
like
what happened
a
in my
majority
theater.
of them are based on a true story, and it might not smack you across the face with "We love Jesus," but it's
you get
always
that,
like
you
a
get that
God-loving
sense.
family that has a trial or tribulation, and they
And I
go
think
through
typically
it.
and I
those
think
movies
actually
are
he's directing
terrible.
another movie.
Like, a lot of faith-based movies are really bad, and that's because they don't. It's just like, and I'm not saying they all are. That'd be a
No,
case by case thing, but
there's
the
been a
vast
couple I've
majority
seen that are
are, because they're just like, oh no, the kid is sick, we should pray, and then it's like, God saved him. Like, that's not a good story.
No.
Right.
So that's
There's
why a lot
usually
of
like
times
a
they
very
don't.
preachy moment at one point in the
Yeah.
movie and stuff like that. So like, yeah, I get
Yeah.
it. Yeah, but apparently I think he's directing a couple other films because I think when I was watching the trailer, it's like, oh yeah, that's the director of this movie. So it just felt really weird that there
Yeah.
were a lot of trailers, but I guess that the company, I guess they even have their own streaming service that is mainly a lot of these.
The other
types of
one,
films.
the other movie they put out this year is called His Only Son, which, as I always
It's
say, I'd love to
heavily.
cover every 20. If we could hit every 2023
Yeah.
movie, we'll try. But His Only
Impossible.
Son came out a few months. It came out in March. I believe that's about Abraham and Isaac, which is in it. That's the thing. Like, so far, it seems like they make good choices. That's a
my
very
wife-
intriguing story versus some story where it's just
Yeah.
like,
My
there's
wife
trouble,
really
and then
likes
God
the show.
fixed it.
Yeah, my wife watches the show The Chosen, which is about the life of Jesus Christ, kind of during that period of time. And it's like, I mean, again,
Does she watch it
it's
on
hard
Angel?
because, huh?
Does she
No, it's on
watch it
Netflix.
on?
It's
Okay.
no, that show's on Peacock actually. I think she said that show's on
Okay.
Peacock, but it is produced by Angel Studios. But it's like,
Okay.
it's this life of Jesus Christ. But I mean, it's fictionalized to an extent because, of course, like you have to write a script from what is based on the text, and the texts aren't like there isn't a full blown like it's like an outline of what the movies or the show is going to be essentially. So that's a show that she likes to watch that is from that same studio.
And then finally, with the studio, did you see anything about they get a lot of funding from like angel investors?
Yeah, so what I read was that they do a lot of crowdfunding type stuff
Okay.
for these films. So that's how they get a chunk of their money, because they are pretty much like it's like an independent studio that has a little bit more of a it's more of like a faith-based type of films. And it's like they're not like like Charlie, what you're saying is like they're not like a full-blown faith-based studio, but you can see where it leans very heavily into that kind of stuff.
Which
And I'm not saying that's bad or good, but I'm just saying of course there's a market for it.
Let me provide a little
absolutely,
context because anything that I read from, I'll provide a link for it. This is just Wikipedia, but it was founded by several brothers and this other guy. that they wanted, and this isn't a new idea. They didn't invent this. Video stores, I think, used to do this, where people would come in and they'd be like people would make what were essentially early forms of fan edits, where they would dub a movie but cut out all the racy bad stuff. Because like 99% of the time you have a sex scene in a movie, it's completely unnecessary, right? Like we've been talking about this in Discord recently with like apparently Oppenheimer, maybe the scene was cut, but it apparently has some sex scene.
Yeah,
It's like,
it's
that's
rated
weird
R,
because
right?
Nolan has never fell back on a sex scene because they're generally unnecessary. Like back in the day, two people would just start kissing and then you crossfade and like it's the adults in the room know that they banged, but you don't show it. But over time, it's like our movie has boobies in it, and then they get a big box office. So then suddenly everybody has to chase that
And it's
trend.
been a thing a lot more recently too, right? Like Asteroid City, no reason, Scarlett Johansson. Whatever
in a PG-13 movie, she took her robe off, and you're like,
what's her name?
Naked woman
From Hunger Games, the movie she's in. Apparently,
Jennifer
there's
Lawrence.
like a weird random nude scene in that one.
Yeah.
And just
like back in the day, it was like
the point?
actresses had class, and they were like, these are for my husband. And then I remember, I in my view, when I first saw it, it was Swordfish with Halle Berry, where just for no reason there's a topless scene with her. And then at that point, it was like, if you want to be a famous actress, you're gonna get naked for us, whether you want to or not. And anybody has any shame, they suddenly would disappear.
Hey.
Scott
was
McCartney.
my dad.
Oh, I thought that was Scott.
I thought it was
Scott changed
our
his
Scott
name or
making fun of
something.
us.
No, that's my
Okay.
dad. My dad has been like hounding me today. He was like, "You
Hi,
were going to
Mr.
put me on the
McCurdy.
podcast," and I was
Dude,
like, "I didn't."
Mr.
say I was gonna
McCurdy,
put
if
on
you
the
want to
McCurdy's
join
dad.
us to talk about this movie, I'm all
Oh
for
my
it.
god!
But,
Tell us at
Okay,
what
so I will
point
tell
you
you. I'll
cried.
tell you one thing my dad told me. I'll tell you one thing real quick that my dad told me before
He
we get
said,
into
"Don't
this.
tell anyone I
The
cried."
first thing my dad tells me after we leave the theater, he's like, "This movie is like Uncle Tom's Cabin." I was like, "What are you talking about?"
And then that's
And he's
exactly
saying-
what he says.
Yeah.
Did you guys watch
I
that?
mean, this.
I watched it.
Yeah, he was talking about the book though, but he was saying that like back in the 1800s, like that was the book that kind of woke up people to.
I'm talking about the
things about
post-movie
slavery.
message from Jim Caviezel. Did you watch
McCurdy
that?
said he skipped it, but maybe he pulled it up on YouTube
Like,
after.
I'm
or
out of
something.
here.
Okay,
I am
because
leaving.
I don't know if this is what you're saying, but the funny thing about
He was
that
talking
is that
about
in-
about the movie
Jim-
as a whole, as a text.
But Jim
But that's
Caviezel,
what he
in
straight
his
up says
special
at the
message
end.
in the credits, he says we want this movie to be like Uncle Tom's Cabin. We want it to be that like Uncle Tom's Cabin was a big influence on everybody that led to the ending of slavery in America. He said, we want this to be the equivalent, the modern day equivalent. We want this to help lead the charge against human trafficking.
Right.
You're saying that your dad put that together wut Jim?
He said that as we
laying
were
it up
leaving
for
the
him?
theater because I was just like, I'm ready to leave.
Interesting.
I'm like, I'm done. I got to get out of here.
Okay, he got it.
And
he
so
got
we
it.
left, but then
Good
my dad
job,
pointed
Scott.
that out. So
Yeah, well,
exactly.
yeah,
that's what my dad
huevos.
said.
that was my favorite line of the whole thing, and it wasn't even part of the movie. It was when Jim said the storyteller. He quoted somebody. Who'd he quote?
That's why I said his
Plato or
performance
Aristotle.
in that
Said
was better.
the storyteller is the most powerful person in the world, which is the book I wrote. That's basically the log line. It's just like the storyteller is the
Well, then
ultimate
again,
power.
I mean, we were talking earlier about how, like, I was like, yeah, it's. I mean, we were talking about the statistics versus talking about real people. Like, that's a huge difference. And of course, like that, that makes sense.
So anyway,
Okay.
real quick though, let me just cover off on what I started reading half an hour ago. They
About
basically
Angel Studios?
VidAngel was a service that would just filter out, whatever swear words. Like you could just like set it to just filter out nudity and swear words or whatever, depending on your kid's age and all that. And then they got sued. Several studios sued them. And again, this isn't new. This happened in 2016, but this same stuff was happening in the 90s where people
And that's something they
would edit
my
movies.
father-in-law would value.
Exactly. Who
There's a
doesn't
market for it.
like? You're like, I would love to watch this movie with my kids, but I can't because of random boobs or something or swear words that are unnecessary. So frankly, studios
Random
should be
things.
providing this, but then they hide behind the idea of like, well, the we can't
Art.
shit on the artist's vision, and it's like, well, you can a little bit when it comes to people wanting to actually watch your movies, but without
Right.
you know, and have their kids present. So it's like I understand the argument either way, but obviously I'm a big fan of fan edits, and I think Hollywood should embrace the fan edit because all fan
Right.
edits do is push people to seek out the original film and watch it, you know. But anyway, so
I grew up
they got
with, like,
sued, and because of that, they ended up splitting off VidAngel. I guess they sold that off, and they decided, screw it, we're going to start our own studio, Angel.
Right.
And then
Oh,
they
okay.
have like some complicated thing about crowdfunding, like where you buy a piece of the company or something like that. But they seem to have a very interesting business plan. And again,
Right.
I'll anything I read from, I'll put a link in the description of these. But it is at least nice to see that, like, whether you agree with it or not, that these other Hollywood alternative studios and entities can crop up now in the digital
Competition
age.
is good.
Yeah.
Yes, it's always good.
Okay. Bing.
Huevos, his
Bing.
book isn't 100% done yet. to
Okay,
answer
so we
your
got
question.
Jim Caviezel. He's our plays Jesus. He plays Tim Ballard. But yeah, most people remember him from playing in The Passion of the Christ. He played Jesus Christ. You know, he's been in a bunch of other movies. And Charlie, you've seen The Thin Red Line. I have not seen it. Is this correct in saying that he was
think I've
not
seen it either.
originally cast as the main character in that movie, and then he ended up being the main character in that movie?
I saw an interview where he talks about how Terrence Malick, the director, that they're like soulmates and best friends. I fucking hate Terrence Malick movies to the point where we should rank them. But
they're hard to watch. I agree with
yeah.
you. They are very hard to watch.
They're for snooty-hatted people, in my view.
I love
So,
snooty-hatted movies, though. I will say this. I did try to
too.
watch. I tried to
Depends.
watch King. What is it? Knight of Cups. I tried to watch that, and I was like, I was bored to tears. I was like, this works better if it's a commercial or a short film, but like as a whole feature, it's very hard to watch.
Beyond being bored. It's like you have to take mushrooms to watch his fucking movies, and it's.
But he did. But I mean, the movies he did prior to, I think
he'll just go off filming a bird. Yeah, exactly. Like it's like he's stoned as he's just like, look at this crocodile for 30 minutes.
Look at that.
You're like, dude.
Yeah. No, I feel like he didn't. He
he should have been a nature photographer and not a.
I know we're off
a narrative
topic, but like
filmmaker.
he did. I mean, didn't I? Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that movie, at least Thin Red Line, at least had more of a narrative. Whereas like some of his later films after that, when he started doing Tree of Life, that's when the movie started becoming more and more like tone poems, as people like to call them.
It's like back to you guys know my take on this. It's like, you know, when I go off about hipsters, it's like if I say I like this movie, that means I'm smart, and I just go, you know, no, I see through the bullshit. It's bullshit, right. You know, as opposed to something like Beau Is Afraid or Infinity Pool that are actually smart and actually have something to say. And then you have like a Terrence Malick movie that is like, if I just have a shot of a bird flapping around that says something about life, like it's just I see through it. But Jim Caviezel, though, I think is a very talented guy, but he's also, again, you watch interviews of him and he seems like he's very much the like spiritual, very emotional actor. Like he seems like he's like not with it entirely. Again, I love the guy, and I thoroughly appreciate his iron will and his work ethic and his faith. Like he's just very centered in those things. But that's why I bring up the idea of like, but he needs somebody to provide words for him, you know, like he needs that.
I felt like
he seems like such a good man
in the movie. I feel like the thing about the movie with his character specifically is I did feel like I could tell that like, obviously he was very much for the cause and part of the reason probably why he was doing this movie and everything. And I understood that there was a part of me that felt like there are times where I'm like, I feel like he's a little stiff. He's just a slight, like, to me, he wasn't he's not the best actor, but like, I'm like buying it enough where I'm like, okay, well, like we're still going, you know, I didn't think he was the worst thing in the world, but I do feel like he's just ever so stiff. And I don't know, but yeah, he has good moments in the movie where like, he's tearing up watching watching child porn in the office and things like that. But there were other
Yeah.
scenes where I was like I didn't buy what I was watching on screen a little bit. And I was
And
like,
you both
okay.
have said that at this point, and I do think I
He didn't
understand
sell it as
what
much.
you're
It's
saying.
like what like
But I
let
wasn't
me let's
necessarily
get to
like
it.
crazy focused on that. Because
No.
like most of the
I know.
It's
movie,
not.
he's
It
playing
doesn't
a
detract.
part. Like most
all
of the
the
movie,
time.
I'll tell you
he's
my
pretending to be a pedophile through most
right.
of the movie.
And I get,
You
and it's
know,
not like I didn't understand that. I was like, okay, I get what he's doing. I understand why he's doing the things he's doing. It wasn't like I didn't pick up on those things, but it was
Yeah.
like there. Well, we'll talk about it. Let's go through the last slide real quick. There's just our
Okay.
last 3, and these are like Of course, there are way more actors in this movie, but many of them you probably have never heard of. I have never heard of. But we got Bill Camp. I thought he was like the best part of this movie, honestly.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
he was my favorite
Mhm.
He
part.
was our James Bond
he was great.
ally who is
Yeah,
like,
he's
yeah,
the
I'm an
James
old
Bond ally
pervert
character.
and I got to make up for it. It's like if
Yeah.
Topol was like, yeah, I once had sex with the 14-year-old and I feel bad about it and I help you
Yeah.
out, Bond, So
Yeah, he was my
he
favorite
was
part.
a shining part.
He's been in all sorts of movies. He was in Lincoln, 12-Year Slave. He was in The Joker, Boardwalk Empire. He was in The Outsider, which is a Stephen King show that you should watch on
I
HBO.
didn't recognize
He's
him, but I've seen
he's
most of those.
he's
So
in
that's
tons of
wild.
stuff. My joke thought though is I thought he was Bert Kreischer's dad as I was watching the movie because there was moments I looked at him I was like,
he should have
looks like
played Bert
He looks like
Kreischer's
the
dad.
machine.
He
Looks like
should
the
have played him.
machine.
That's funny.
But yeah, he honestly, I'm being legitimate honest. Like I thought he was one of the best parts.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Mira
No doubt.
Sorvino plays Catherine Ballard. She barely has anything to do in this movie. I mean, I feel like she's
pretty
hardly in this
pointless.
movie.
Which
it's
is
not like
sad
pointless.
because the real life story is that the whole thing, like none of it would have happened without her. She's the one who
we see
and
those
we
scenes, though.
see
It's
that
like,
and that's
It
what I'm
seems
saying.
more
We
like she's
see
just
those
supporting
scenes,
him,
but
but
she's like,
not
hey, you
pushing
should
him
go
to
do it. And it's like they put it more on like it was as if it was his decision. But in real life, he says in interviews, he's like, I was kind of hoping that my wife would say, are you crazy? I need you here. You got to come home. We have kids. Are you
They have
stupid?
a lot of kids.
And
Yeah.
they have 9 at this point.
they're Mormons.
And so like I
Yeah, that's
I
probably
agree.
why.
I wish they would have played that up a little bit more where she's like, no, you pussy. If you can actually do something about this, you should. You're not coming home until you bring those kids with you. Like that would have
Yeah.
been that like get us fired up thing because it again in real life, she was like the one who like if
Right.
not for her, these kids would be dead or
She's just, and I just feel
worse.
bad because it's like I had never heard of her. I mean, I had the vibe that she was like, okay, so she's somebody who had been an actress back in the day as far as a bigger name, and now she's doing like kind of these smaller budget movies like this one. And but I guess she
Isn't she like an
actually had won an
award-winning
Oscar.
actress?
Yeah, she won an
Yeah.
Oscar for Mighty Aphrodite in 1996. And then I looked through her IMDb and she has tons
Mighty
of other movies that
Aphrodite?
she's been in.
Maybe she's
Mighty
one of these
Aphrodite,
actresses
sorry.
who decided she wasn't going to flash her boobs like Halle Berry,
So
and
she was
then
in
they
another.
stopped giving her roles.
She was in
What are you
another.
asking again, Scott?
She's also an activist that's also against human trafficking. That's probably another reason why she's in
Yeah,
this movie.
Any
which doesn't
issues?
make you
She's also
very
another.
popular for some reason, but we'll get to that.
Okay. We're
Okay.
going down that route. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And then Kurt Fuller plays Frost. And I just
I
remember
don't know
this
what
guy
I
from
recognize him
Ghostbusters
from.
2. He's in Ghostbusters 2 as he plays the mayor's assistant. He's kind of
He's like a big TV actor, and he's like a
every movie and
that
TV show
guy
that he
actor.
he usually plays kind of this similar character, kind of like
Yeah.
this guy who's kind of the red tape, or the guy that's like the stooge that you're just like, he's not letting us do this thing or that thing. Like he's very much typecasted, I feel like, in a lot of his movies. But again, like him popping up in this movie, I was like, yeah, he's great. He's a great character actor. So that's all I have. I know, Charlie, you probably have like a whole page's worth of stuff, but Nance, what did you think of this movie?
I thought it was fine. Like, it was well shot. Everything looked good. Everything sounded good. But there's just something almost untangible that makes it feel low budget. It
Yeah.
almost felt like, I don't know if pacing is the right term or what, but just the way it's kind of cut together, it's like kind of disorientating almost. But so like for like, I don't know if you could even call it a B movie. It's a good B movie. It's an
Yeah.
all right, like
I felt
full on
similar to
movie.
how
I think
you
that's
felt.
If
fair.
that makes sense.
I felt
I think
I felt
I read that.
Like
I felt
it's not in the
similar
same
because I
league
felt
as
like
everything else we've
yeah.
seen,
No.
minus
Like Charlie, you
whatever the
said in the beginning, you
crap at
said,
the
you know,
bottom
it's like
is.
shot well. You were like, it's shot
Shot well.
well. It
It's
looks
well
good, you know.
produced. It
Yeah,
is
It's well
there's
produced.
slickly
And like
produced.
that
nothing
was the thing.
wrong with
it
that stuff.
feels like it is. It's like if because there's shots in this movie, I was like, yeah, that's impressive. Like that's actually a pretty good shot.
Mhm.
But there were like I did have that same feeling, Nance, where I felt like it is almost a Hollywood movie. Like it's almost there. It's like indie movie. Like when I'm talking about indie movie, I'm talking about like low budget indie movie that you like you
I feel
go
like
see at a
Charlie
film
could edit
festival,
it better.
and then you're just there because part of me was like I felt like the movie felt longer than it needed to be at times.
There's some
But
random
at the
scenes
same
in there that don't need to be there,
right,
or
and I felt like I think my thought process as I was leaving the movie, I was like, now, like again, I'm gonna say this. This movie is an important movie as far as it is about something that is very horrible and it happens in real life. And I felt like after watching it, I was like, yeah, this movie is definitely feels like propaganda, but it's propaganda for a good cause because like again, like propaganda,
Propaganda has a
you're putting
negative connotation these days, but
it does,
propaganda can be good or bad.
but
Propaganda just means something
you
that's
would agree
pushing
that
an
this
idea.
I think this movie does there's a lot of little subtle like Charlie, you did point out that like this movie isn't as over the top as what I think people think it is. And
Yeah.
I would agree with that
oh yeah,
because I would say
We
like
gotta go get
over
Obama. Obama's
right.
he's
Well, it wasn't
raping
just
some
that, but
kid
like
right
it's
now. We gotta
weird that
go.
like the
I
over the
just got the
top thing would
text
have
message
been
from QAnon. He's confirmed.
the over the
You
top
know.
thing
weird
would
that
have
it's
been
like
if
a
the movie was like an action
Oh God,
movie and
Johnny
like
Depp has one of the kids. We gotta go. Oh God, he's got the
why do you
adrenochrome.
sound like
He,
Batman?
he just took the adrenochrome. Now Johnny Depp is morphing. Oh no, you
oh
know,
my
like, and then
God.
they got to get like Zordon to send them
Right.
to
Like
the Power Rangers. And, yeah,
well, I mean, not even
I get
that
it.
kind of over the top. It's like I want to say, like I know you were saying like this movie isn't that over the top. I'm like there were times where I was like I groaned a little bit because I was like, oh okay, like that felt
But
a
okay,
little too
be
heavy-handed at
specific though,
times.
because I don't I was because I told you guys like real quick.
But I was
Let me
back and forth. Like there were times where I was like,
let
this
me
movie's actually
provide a
pretty
little
good.
context because you
Right.
guys just in our private conversations. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but you guys were like assuming that I had some agenda in watching this, and I always say I'm like. Well, first off, it's a 2023 movie, and there's a lot of buzz
Right.
around this, so I want to talk about it. But to provide a little context, last year, Robert Davi, the bad guy in License to Kill, like one of our favorite bad guys,
Right.
you know, it was basically Pablo Escobar in
He's
Bond.
in Die Hard.
Yeah.
He made a movie called My Son Hunter, and it's about Hunter Biden, and it's all the just we've all heard at this point all the crazy stuff that Hunter Biden's into, and it's a movie about that. And so I was interested because it's like, you know, the mainstream Hollywood's not going to make that movie, so it was this independent film, and I bought it and I watched it, and guess what? It fucking sucked. It's a terrible movie. If it was a good movie, it's like whatever. I'm good at separating politics and just assessing a movie as it is. And so after that, I kind of expected this to be the same, where maybe it would be like Plane. Maybe it would be like, yeah, we just got the order that Joe Biden, he's got the kids. Joe Biden's all over these. He's sniffing all these kids, you know, whatever it may be. That's not the case. This movie has no politics in it. It's just about a guy who, for a living, is a pedophile buster. And we see, like, you know, that guy in the beginning, whatever his name was, who all that was true. That it's this guy who wrote a book about like the beauty of pedophilia or something. And all of that was
What?
true. Like him busting that guy. Yeah, like you can buy that book on Amazon. Like that's all
Oh
true.
my gosh.
And so I'm the whole time I'm on edge looking for the stuff that's going to pander to me, right? It's going to pander to me. And my panderometer never went off. Not once, where like I even told Nance, I was like, if the movie begins and ends with the Pledge of Allegiance, I'll go ahead and say this movie sucks. But it didn't. There was never like, a moment of like, my country, freedom isn't free. It costs folks like you and me. Like there was never Team America propaganda moment like that. It's just a story about a guy, just like Taken. But something like Taken does have a little bit more flair to it.
There was moments,
whereas this has more of a real world feel to it. That's the difference.
And I felt like maybe that's where Nans and I kind of feel where it's like, I felt that's how I felt with Plane, is I felt like we didn't either go hard enough, because I felt like the movie was like it was holding itself back from being the cliche of what people think this movie was going to be. And part of me is like, I kind of wish we had a little bit of the cliche, just because I was bored at times. Now, like I was bored at times, but I will say this, the sequence, most of the first act is probably some of the best, like filmmaking that will get into your skin and like really tear you up.
Yeah. I thought it was a little long though.
It is long. I just think I think it's long for a purpose, but I do think like there are moments where I'm just like, God damn it. Like this movie, I want to hate this movie, but like, you're not giving me a reason to hate it, because I'm like, what you're doing, it's like you are emotionally compromising me as I'm watching the fucking movie. And I'm like, okay, I'm really kind of invested, and I want to make sure that like, but it also horrifies you. It's like, there's this, like we talked about Beau Is Afraid, earlier this week or earlier the year, and it was like, that movie's like a horror movie, but it's not a horror movie, it's more of a nightmare. This movie feels like kind of the same way, where there's aspects of like real life horror and real life trauma, and it does it in a way that's like, it's insinuated very heavily, like another great scene. And I feel like, Charlie, I feel like this is the kind of stuff that you would want to put in your book, is like the scene where the dad's already dropped off the kids at the place, and it's already like, that was a moment where I was already like, so the dad doesn't do anything, he's just like, oh, I have to pick him up at 7. That was a little weird.
Yeah, like he went home.
The moment the moment though is that I'm thinking of is when you see the kids, and they're like, she's showing the kids how to pose for the camera,
how to be sexy, and you're like,
and how to be sexy, and that's when it's like, God, you're like that's when it gets in your head, because you know what this movie, like you're going into the movie, you're like, what this movie's about. And like, I think most, and this is kind of the stuff that like my father-in-law talks about, is sexualizing kids. And I do write some of it off, because I do feel like to some extent, I think it's not as bad as I feel like, as far as like having girls pose or doing kinds of things, because I do think to some degree that like, when we were all 16 and at an age that wasn't adulthood, but it was definitely younger than being adult, that we did do those things. It's not like I'm not saying that like kids weren't trying to be intimate with other people, because you're growing, you're trying to learn how to do those things. But we're talking about kids that are like younger than that, kind of, even like younger than, I think she was like 9 or 10 or something like that.
She's putting makeup on them, and she's like,
and you're seeing this happen.
I took a niece of mine to a video shoot, and she loved it. We put like lip gloss on her, and she loved it. But what you're saying is that there's a difference between like family photos, like I have tons of like grandkids in my family.
Like if you're doing something,
and we dance, and like they like something like that. They shake their butt, and we all have a good time. But we don't take videos of it and then sell it to perverts who are going to jerk off to it.
No.
And then with the makeup, it was like a professional video shoot where we put a little bit of lip gloss and some other stuff and dressed up my niece, and she loved it. It was for a well-known beanbag brand.
I'm thinking about more like when you're going to Disney World and the kids want to be.
But the moment that you understand the context, that it's like, this is going, because like we all know, like anybody who wants to deny that this stuff exists or whatever, which is absurd. Because again, we'll get into this. Or at least I will. McCurdy will probably go to bed by the time we get into this.
I'll go to bed and be like, oh God.
Imagine the spectrum where there's
Don't
over
leave
here
me alone with him, McCurdy.
None of this exists, right? And then over here on the other end of the spectrum, we have like Hollywood elites are eating children to stay young, right? But
Are
the
people
truth,
saying it doesn't
but the
exist?
truth
There's
is
no way.
somewhere in between. Yeah, there are people who are like, that's absurd, that's crazy, but that that's because their lives are fantastic in America, even though even in America alone, there's tons of this going on, and I'll pull that up. But it's the truth is generally somewhere in the middle, right? Regardless of like Johnny Depp drinking your kid's blood so he doesn't have cracks in his skin. It's
You mean Paul Rudd?
Or
Paul
our
Rudd's probably a
favorite
better
Keanu.
example.
Yeah.
Paul Rudd.
Well, Paul
never
Rudd's the
ages.
classic, like he doesn't age. Like Paul Rudd still looks like he's 12.
He's the guy that people say
somehow.
doesn't age. Like, what does he use? And like,
It's
no
just
one knows.
because he's happy-go-lucky.
Yeah.
Probably because he doesn't listen to Chucky rants all the time.
Yeah. Anyway, I completely lost my thought since we
you were talking about the spectrum of like what is true and what is fiction, and how like
it always lies in the middle. It's like this
somewhere
stuff
in the
goes
middle,
on.
Right.
But, well, I guess my ultimate point was that like we all know that child porn exists. That's a thing that exists. Where the fuck do you think it comes from? Do you think it just comes from like your neighbor who just decides to like take photos of their kids to as a side hustle? No, it has to come from somewhere. So anybody who's like this human trafficking isn't real, like human slave, like we outlawed slavery hundreds of years ago. It doesn't exist. It's like no, slavery has always existed, and it probably always will exist. Yeah, and which unfortunately, like most bad things in life, will always exist somewhere because that's just the nature of life. And so it's like and we live in a day and age where I have a buddy of mine where we are all day every day we're arguing politics and shit like this, and he'll be like, what is it with you people, and you're all about these like weird like pedophile rings, and like everything always goes back to like child fucking. And I go, dude, we went through several years of a media circus about a man who had an entire pedophile island. He had an island that there's all these records of people flying to the island to have sex with children. And
Spectre Island?
And you think that was an isolated incident. You have to be fucking naive to think that Spectre Island isn't real. I mean, at this point, it's just common knowledge that this happened. Everybody knows about it. It was like, oh, no, that was just an isolated incident. Where did that guy get all of his money?
Isolated incident.
Where did that guy get all of the money to pull this off if he didn't have support? And that's the question. Right. That's the thing. And then meanwhile, human trafficking is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and child pornography comes from somewhere, and there's millions of images generated every year.
I'm pretty sure aliens
Where does that come from?
Dropping it off.
Yeah, right. So yeah, nobody's to blame. Anyway,
they gave us
Scott. Though Scott's gonna get mad at not your dad Scott, but Scott Lormer is gonna get mad at us if we keep ignoring him. He's curious about the all these reports about people having bad experiences at the theater. I don't know.
I haven't heard anything about that.
Who knows?
Yeah, so my mother-in-law, God bless her soul, my mother-in-law, she posted some article about how theaters were turning off the AC to hinder people from seeing the movie, and then there was another article out that were like the
I haven't heard anything about that.
Like, but I think what's going on, and like
I've heard about like churches buying out theaters, and
they were talking about how people are getting upset with the movie theaters, saying that like, oh my gosh, they did this and they're doing this to all these theaters. And I think what's happening is that is an isolated incident where it happens, but people aren't used to going back to the movie theaters as often, so they don't realize that like, there's sometimes dumb things happen at the movie theaters all the time. Yeah, and like it's not.
I walked into mine. Mine smelled like BO. I'm not blaming mine smelling on like BO.
No, it's not like,
on it being Sound of Freedom. Go ahead, Nance.
Right wingers usually stink.
Oh no!
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say
they were probably carrying guns.
It's a normal day at the theater.
Nance, I was t-balling you to go ahead and say that Regal is old and shitty in our city.
Well, it is.
But I didn't immediately go, there's a conspiracy to shut down this viewing. I had no problem. Some people have said that the volume was turned down, but remember in the Quantum episode, I said if people are looking for a problem, they will find it.
They will.
And if
find
you're
it.
going in and it's like, I stepped on a melted chocolate bar, there's a conspiracy to not let me watch this movie. Like I assume that's what's going on. But at the same time, the mainstream media there is some weird campaign telling people to not see this movie, and that is weird. People having a weird experience at the theater is like you're probably seeing problems where there are none. But the mainstream media actively saying don't see this movie is problematic because when's the last time they said don't see a movie? When has the fucking media ever said don't watch a movie? So that's
Charlie, where did they say that at? Where did you see that at? Where they said to not watch the movie?
Well, go ahead and just start displaying stuff if you like.
Okay, cool. Got it.
This guy comes up. He
Hollywood
says,
I thought it was a video.
This guy who here, wait, hang on. We got to get rid of.
How do we know this isn't photoshopped?
Well, I believe. I at least believe.
So
I think.
So
Charlie, I will
this
say
guy
this.
This guy is a Rothschild. This guy is and I don't know if he's one of the Rothschilds. Probably a Rothschild goes on CNN and says, "Don't see this movie about human trafficking." That's hilarious. That's like a fucking Onion article. But all of these, all these outlets saying it's just QAnon, and QAnon is just something that it's like calling somebody racist these days. It's just, here's a thing that's bad, and so we associate the thing we don't like with the bad thing that you're supposed to ignore, and then immediately people are supposed to walk away with the idea of, isn't that the movie that's all QAnon? And then they ignore it. So like Rolling Stone, Sound of Freedom is a superhero movie for dads with brainworms. Washington Post, Sound of Freedom is a box office hit whose star embraces QAnon. The Guardian, Sound of Freedom, the QAnon adjacent thriller seducing America. Jezebel, Sound of Freedom is an anti-child trafficking fantasy fit for QAnon.
The other picture.
QAnon has nothing to do with this movie whatsoever.
How do I see the other picture?
They attribute it to it because they want you to ignore it. It's not a matter of my beliefs or your beliefs or anybody's beliefs. Why the fuck do they feel the need to tell us to not see a movie? When's the last time they said don't see a movie?
Gets them riled up. It's fine.
It gets people excited and boosts their numbers.
Can we just talk about the movie? Like, I
Okay,
just want to talk about movies.
That's all bad, but it's also bad.
Great, that's great.
On Rotten Tomatoes, it has 100% audience score with 10,000 plus reviews. That's also bullshit.
Yeah. So, wait, what? How's that bullshit? Here's one from Kevin Sorbo.
Is it 100%
The media
movie? No.
praised Cuties, a movie about little girls showing off their goodies, and then they shit on a movie like this. Here's another fun one. Former CNN producer sentenced to more than 19 years for sexual assault of a 9-year-old girl. That's not to say that every CNN producer is going to be a child molester, but it's like, these are the types of things that just make you go, that's weird.
Yeah,
I mean,
Charlie, I just don't think.
And it's
Charlie,
weird
can you
that
just
this
stop
guy,
putting this,
Tim Ballard, who,
oh my god,
dude, these are the things.
These
are the things you
no,
see.
but like
now,
here's
a weird one.
Here's a weird one. Corporation because of one specific thing that happened with one person.
Sure.
So you're making a weird connection. Like, I just feel like you're overgeneralizing. We're not actually talking about the movie.
Dude,
like, I'd rather talk about the movie than
I'm
the stuff
displaying
around the
headlines. I'm simply
right.
I'm not saying
I know,
believe
but I'd rather
anything.
us just talk about our thoughts on the movie.
This is why I show stuff like this. This is why I show stuff like this. This may or may not be taking it too far because there's no proof other than the fact that the CIA does fucked up shit all the time. But this is just a fact that Caviezel has said things like adrenochrome or whatever is real, and there's not that much scientific proof
said
of
by
stuff
Wall
like
Street
that.
Silver, your trusted source for whatever.
And then there's something like this. This is like clearly fake. This is a guy saying, I work at an AMC and we were instructed to put this liquid into Sound of Freedom audiences' drinks or something. Like,
I work at AMC and they told us to go rate this movie 100% audience score.
But McCurdy, I'm showing
crap
things from both sides to showcase your.
No, you're not. You've showed mostly stuff from Fox News. Like, show me the stuff from CNN. Like,
the first fucking thing I did was pull up.
Yeah, but
CNN,
you criticized
dude.
it. That was the first thing you did was criticize.
That's Fox
it.
News.
Like, That's a thing from Fox
I'm
News
show,
that you
dude.
found.
Look, okay. Again, do I need to pull up this incident where this is
That's the
clearly
one
fucking
thing.
fake?
I know that sounds like
This is
fake.
clearly
I'm just
fucking
saying. All I'm
fake.
saying is like I'd rather just talk about the movie
It's
than
all
talk about
crap, and I
everything
don't
around
care
the movie
about
and
it.
let people figure out what they want to figure
There's
out.
a lot of shit going on, dude, and you want to ignore it. I'm trying to be as 50-50 as
Right,
possible,
we're
but both of
talking
you,
about
no, both of you
yeah,
being
but
fucking ninnies. You're both being fucking ninnies. I'm trying to be 50-50, and you're both being overly sensitive to 50% of what I'm projecting here.
We're not being sensitive. It has
Yeah,
nothing
you
to do with
are.
the
You're being
movie.
fucking sensitive. I want to talk about the movie too, but there's a lot of shit surrounding it to the point where
right.
McCurdy's first thing he did was talk about it's a true story, but not completely true. You know, why do you feel the need to react that way?
Because like, you know, you're talking about how like you come into the movie and you're like, oh, this doesn't feel like it's pandering. And I'm like, it kind of did to me as I was sitting through the theater. I'm like, there's just a lot of stuff where it's just like, it doesn't have to be,
That
but
would
it's
be
very subtle
pandering.
in the way that
That
it
would be
does it.
pandering.
It's a very subtle way that it does it. And I didn't say, and again, like there were aspects of the movie that I said that I did like, you know, like I was like, actually, this is actually doing a really good job. I do feel like here's what I'll say about like the QAnon stuff and everything else. Like I did have a friend that even reached out and said like she's like, oh, isn't that QAnon movie? And like I read about
That's
the
what I
movie,
mean.
and then Rob
That's
did things about it
exactly
like
what I
like
mean.
this, right? But I think like part of it is it doesn't help when you have people associated with a film that are already associated with something else. And so then when you're trying to get out a message that you feel like it's very important and like not everybody agrees with everything that you're saying, that with the things that you are associated with or have been in the past, it makes it very hard for you to get your message out without people jumping on you and saying you're this or that. And that's what I feel like happens with this movie is like
That
I feel
always happens.
like again, I'm saying I agree that like this is bad. We should do more to stop this. I just don't think that like when you start associating yourselves with organizations that get bad raps, then it doesn't help your cause. And that's
No.
what I feel like. That's how I feel about it.
But
It's like that's why
try
I'm
putting
also
this
like I
message
want to
out,
talk
though, dude.
about.
Try putting this message out and not getting shit on. That's
I know, but
that's
you
the
were like
Christ
going
story. The
about
whole
it as
Jesus Christ
you're
story is like I have a
expecting that's
message,
going to happen,
and the
right?
powers that be want you dead. That's the whole Jesus Christ story. I'm the truth, the way, the life. I have this message
Right.
for everybody, and that immediately threatens the powers that be, and they want to kill you. And so you can't just come out and be like, hey, this is a real problem and we should fix it, because they have these ready-made things to these hit pieces and everything that they throw out there to fuck you up. And so you have somebody like Tim Ballard who he's like he's been asked, he's like, okay, ritual sacrifice of kids. I don't know if they're doing it in Hollywood. That might be just be some weird QAnon stuff. I have no idea, but I've been there in Africa where they are doing it. I've seen it.
Right.
I've seen it happening. And it's not taking place in LA. I don't know. He's like, I don't know. I don't know about any of that.
Right.
That I leave that to the weird QAnon people. But I have seen it in other countries, and that's fucking terrifying. So that's what I mean by this like spectrum of truth.
But is he to be
like,
trusted?
Exactly. What do I know? I'm just a guy sitting in his basement. What do I know other than the word of this guy who has video footage of him rescuing children? Is it all fake? I don't know. Fuck if I know. Fuck if any of us know anything. But we do know that human trafficking is real. And so and we do know, I mean, go like if you go so far as the Bible has numerous instances of just like child sacrifice, you know, and human sacrifice in general. And the thought that those practices don't exist anymore because we in America aren't privy to them. Well, yeah, we're a very civilized society, but elsewhere, just the idea that these things still go on is alien to us. But and that's the thing. I don't know Tim. I've never met him. He claims that he'll get people like Tony Robbins on his side. Tony Robbins found out about his organization, OUR, and he went and joined one of these busts. So he saw it firsthand. So if you guys want to pull together $1 million and donate it to Tim, maybe he'll take us on one of these and we can see it firsthand. But when a guy that already has a track record of busting perverts and then has video records of busting an island of perverts, then says that he's seen the ritual sacrifice of kids and human harvesting and all that stuff. I'm like, I think I do believe him. You know, if he said Johnny Depp is eating children, I'd be like, well, can I get a video of that?
Yeah.
Can I get a confession? Like I'm the type where I need proof just like you guys, but I'm also not fucking blind, and I also understand that human nature is shit. So
Where'd Nance go?
I don't know. I don't know what just happened to Nance, but anyway,
this movie. So
This movie.
let me ask you this question: Did you find anything that you were like, as you're watching the movie, you're like, yeah, it kind of misses here? Because I think that was where my point was originally, was like, as I was watching this movie, there were times where I felt like it could have gone harder in aspects, and it doesn't. And I was like, because I was bored at times. I was like, there was emotional stuff that did a really great job of being very like, really kind of expressing to you like why this is important. And then there were times in the movie where I felt like a better movie, or you could even say a Hollywood movie, we would have seen more as to how they were going to play everything out. It's like I saw it, but I felt like they weren't focused that much on it. And I can't tell you if it's because it's a low budget movie, or if they were like, and it kind of similar to, but not exactly. You brought up Straight Outta Compton, and I was thinking of also like a Bohemian Rhapsody, where you have movies. The correlation is that you have movies that are attached to people that the movies are about. It's not a critique of a person, or it's not a objective view of somebody. It is a view that is brought on because you have somebody that is attached to that thing. So Tim Ballard, I'm assuming, was attached to this movie in some capacity. It wasn't just that he was involved with it, right? So obviously he's going to be like, have his notes of like, no, this has to be in the movie. This has to be in the movie, that kind of thing. So there was a part of me that was wondering, like, do you think that he had some kind of, some kind of say in the movie in that regard? Because that was kind of what I felt with Straight Outta Compton, was like, and Bohemian was like, these are movies that it's like, yeah, it's almost like, hey, Charlie, make a movie about me. And then you start making the movie, and then I'm like, no, don't put that in there,
But
and so
I would say though that
I'm not saying there's negative things.
Dr. Dre was an executive producer and was on set the whole time.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know, but I don't through so far with everything that I've watched with Tim Ballard, this is kind of rung true. Like I can't imagine that there's anything that it's not like Dr. Dre, where Dr. Dre was like, can you leave out that part where I was beating up women? Like the last person you expect
I get that.
Beating up women is Tim Ballard. So the thing that I already said, the thing I think was missing. The thing I think was missing was that and this is kind of where I do think you guys are correct in that, like, I don't think that Jim was flat per se, but there were moments that could have been hyped up. Like there's that moment where he's talking with his wife, and it's like, because he had just had the conversation with the dad. So Miguel and Rosia, the dad's like, could you sleep at night knowing that one of your kids' beds is empty? Which is a haunting line. And I don't even have kids. You have kids. Yeah. Could you sleep at night knowing that one of your kids' bed is empty? That's a rough thing to hear. So then he goes home and he's talking with his wife, and his wife is just like, yeah, you got to go. And that's something where whether it was her or him, it could have been played up bigger. It could have been played up as like, no, I can't go. My pension, like I this or that. Because in interviews, he'll talk about how, she had a moment where she was like, someday you're going to die and God is going to ask you, could you have done something? And that would have been, oh God, here's Nans. I'm just gonna go ahead and get rid of Nans. I'm just kidding.
That was like his hat's actually pretty good. Actually,
I had it made before the stream and realized I probably should have put it on a long time ago.
It's a very extreme hat.
Meanwhile, it's got a big crack in the back though.
Yeah, hopefully that all the child pornography that's flying through the airwaves, hopefully that hat will.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. It kind of dropped into my brain.
Yeah,
there you go. No, yeah, but Charlie, as far as the movie,
Well, wait, hang on. I wasn't finished with my thought. What I was talking about
Right.
is that's the moment that could have been played up where, and the obvious thing would be that I think that the way they should have done it, knowing the backstory, is that he's like, honey, I shouldn't do this because what about you and what about the kids and my pension? Because apparently his pension was going to be like $12
that annoyed
million.
me, but that's because that's my job.
Insane. But Nans, you were gone. What I was saying is that you guys are correct where the moments with his wife were really quiet. Like I just remember them as being very quiet and thoughtful, where they should have been a little more passionate, where maybe he's like, I shouldn't do this. I want to, but I shouldn't because, and then she's like, no, you asshole. And
those are the ones
what I was
that
saying
almost
before
seemed random.
is that he said,
Like,
though, in real life, he's
make
like,
them bigger.
His wife said to him, when you meet God, you're going to have to tell him that you could have saved this girl and you didn't. And in real life, it wasn't the girl. It was like maybe another kid or whatever. But either way, it was like, you can do this thing or not do this thing. And you would think that the wife would be like, bitch, we got 10 kids, like, and I need you here and we need money. But she was the one that said, go do it. Like, go get him, Tiger, which is awesome. Like that is fantastic. And so that's where, because Nance McCurdy asked me what was missing or what could have punched it up a little bit.
What was it that you
that would have punched it up for me? That would have been the moment, because there are other moments where, like, because the whole movie's segmented into 3 parts. The first part is Teddy Bear, Miguel. Second part is Pedo Island.
Is so cute.
And then the third part is getting Rocio. Those are the 3 parts. And I thought they were all great. I mean, I remember when because I sent you guys the trailer, and I admitted that at the end of the trailer, when they say, like, we've all been programmed at this point that if a movie trailer utters the title, that's a cliche, but they do it anyway. They say, they're listening to the kids on the beach, and Batman's like, you hear that? That's the sound of freedom. And then Sound of Freedom pops up. And that's a cliche at this point. And they did it probably because it's effective, I guess.
Is that a real song? Well, like that beat that like everyone was playing?
Well, I translated that song at the end. Right?
Yeah, but is it real?
So,
the other thing I thought about that, the one thing that I did think about the movie, and
like
I don't know if you noticed this, but like most movies usually, I mean, this is such, like, you could say, oh, this is such a minor critique of the movie, but like most movies, the soundtrack doesn't run through the entire film. And this movie felt like every single scene had music under it. And I was like a little put off by that, because I'm like, why is it every single scene where you have to hear the same song over and over and over?
That,
and like
I felt that in the moment where he was talking to the billionaire and he was trying to convince him, and he walked away and he was just standing in that wide shot.
Attractive billionaire ever known to man.
And we see it.
Yeah.
Well,
that guy apparently is like a real producer on the movie, I think.
Oh,
so like, that guy is getting it in.
Yeah,
he knows all about.
I didn't say it.
Child trafficking.
Oh God.
I didn't say it. You said it. That's not me.
Yeah,
that was you. You all did this. I didn't do it. You did it. It's my favorite part of that whole.
Yeah, I love that.
It's like he's making that joke about.
You did it. You did it.
No, it was.
Weinstein.
It
was about Weinstein.
And he's like, everyone's like,
that wasn't me. That was you.
I didn't do it. You did it. This is me.
Yeah. Speaking of sex trafficking.
No, and I just felt like if we're ranking this movie, I feel like you're gonna be like, oh, it's at the top. But I'm like, there's part of me that's just like
Charlie.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's how
like,
fucking warped. No, that's how fucking warped you two are. It's from the get-go. You're like, why are we watching this Fox News? Both of you are like, why are we watching this QAnon fucking movie? This is just gonna be like planes. And then your assumption is that I'm gonna put it at the top.
I just said you wouldn't.
Where would you put it?
This is not a list topper.
I'm not saying like
it's not a fucking list topper, but that's your assumption because you're an asshole. Both you are fucking assholes when it comes to this.
Charlie, I just said you wouldn't put it on the top. But this
Where
is
do you think I would put it?
People on the right feel attacked. I get it.
Where do you think I would put it?
Middle to low middle.
You're gonna say like Tetris or Air. Actually, that's actually where I was thinking.
It's below Megan Missing.
But there's something about this movie that I can't, like Nan said, I can't put my
Right
finger
there
on
with
it, but I
missing.
know
The other Taken movie was missing. So it's got to be
Yeah.
right there, right?
No, I was thinking like when we were talking about these movies though. When I said it, I felt like you wanted to put it towards the top because I even told my dad, it's like we're leaving the theater,
I
it's
would.
like,
I would put it towards the top, but to say that it's
yeah,
the
but I didn't
top,
think Charlie, I wasn't gonna say, I wasn't saying you were gonna
So,
put it right as a Beau Is Afraid. I was thinking more in the
how do you
top
rank
10
a movie
slots.
like this? Like,
And this is what felt. This is
the
why this
message
movie
doesn't
felt hard.
matter, right? It's how well is the film made.
I
Right?
would
And there are
say,
times where I'm
objectively
like,
speaking,
it's
ignore
like
the
good,
fact
but
that
then I'm like, not as
it
good.
reflects a real problem. Like ignore the overall, like there's a real issue, and we like, because
Yeah,
it's no
ignoring
different
that.
than something like take something like I already threw in Schindler's List, and I threw in Passion of the
real world
Christ,
movie?
where it's like Passion of the
Okay.
Christ is like atheists are like, it's just a movie about a guy getting beat up, and then Christians are like, it's the best movie ever made. The truth is somewhere in the middle, where it's a really fucking good movie, and you kind of have to
I
understand.
wouldn't go that far.
But well, that's because you're an atheistic piece of shit, where it's just like it has this
child
deep
trafficking is
meaning. Exactly.
Don't say
You
that.
just
Don't
love
say that.
child trafficking.
Don't say that. Don't say that. Demonetize
but
the channel.
But I can easily parse out the, because again, not every movie has a segment at the end dedicated to the main actor saying this is a real problem and we need to solve it. So like, for our purposes, it is best to pretend it's been 1,000 years, and or how about a million years, and human trafficking is gone,
Think about next
and we're
year.
watching these movies in a vacuum, a 2023 vacuum, where it's like, oh, do you know they used to kidnap children and rape them and videotape it and sell it to perverts on the internet? Wow, I didn't know that. That's fucked up. Yeah, they used to do that back in 2023. Treat it that way. How is the movie, regardless of the messaging? I do think it is an important movie.
I thought this is what my thought was. My thought towards that, because I did think about this as well, was that like I'm thinking about this movie, I'm thinking about all the other movies. I'm like yes, the message itself is very important, and I felt like you kind of do have to separate that when you're talking about the film. But I'm like, as a film, as a movie, am I going to want to watch? Is anybody going to want to watch this next year? Like that was my thought. It was like, are you going to want to go back to this? And it's not like a Schindler's List, like I want to go back for this, because Schindler's List is like an artistic piece of work. Like it's not just a message, but it is a very very, very well put together. This is well produced. Yep. That is a piece of art. If that's the distinction. Like one is like, well, like very much creatively thought, and tells a very,
I don't know. It's kind of dated. World War II was like
World War
20
II was
years
like
ago.
Forever ago.
It's like 20 or 30 years ago.
But I'm just saying, like, when you look at a movie like that, and then you compare it to this, I'm like, the filmmaking is better than competent. Like, it's like, it doesn't. Yeah, there's no cracks.
The filmmaking
it
could be dog shit, but like the story itself is still sound. Like even if the cinematography was I'm talking about if the cinematography was top notch, but the story was like, again,
I'm not even talking about
Secret Service is escorting this kid in so Biden can sniff him. QAnon's on the text messenger. He just said, "We got to go in now, America." Then I'd be like, "Yeah, it's." But
I'm not talking about the cinematography
regardless of all
much.
the bullshit, regardless of everything surrounding it, it's a story about a guy who works professionally as a he's a professional law enforcement agent, and it's okay. You have to, this is outside of our jurisdiction. You see stories like this all the time because the trouble with foreign policy is that it goes like this all the time because people see whatever. They see a genocide in some third world country and they go, we have to do something. Why aren't we doing something? And then we go and do something and people die. And then people are like, why are we doing things? We should be isolationists. We should cut ourselves off and never help anybody. And then we go isolationist. And it goes back and forth between the two where it's like, should we police the world or should we not? That's the question that a movie like this brings up, because it's like, okay, look, dude, it's not in our best interest to go rescue some random kids somewhere. So for a guy to quit his job and go do it, that's the story. The story is, I'm gonna go do what nobody else will.
It's
Are you guys
making me laugh
laughing
here.
at
I'm laughing at what
Scott's-
Scott said. I don't know what
yeah,
Scott said to
yeah,
your
I was
comment.
hoping. Yeah.
Anyway, hold on. Can we
He's
put
a
the, let's
sniffer.
put the
He's a
we put the
sniffer.
list back up? I just want to look at the list and try to kind of think.
Yeah,
about it.
same.
Because like,
While you
again,
guys
like,
are pondering,
my
let me read the
thought,
list. We haven't read the list in a while. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Beau Is Afraid and Infinity Pool still at the top because they fucking deserve it. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, coincidentally at 3. Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning Part 1, John Wick Chapter 4, Tetris, Air, Creed 3, The Flash, Fast X, Asteroid City, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Shazam, Fury of the Gods, Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, Megan Missing the Machine, Indiana Jones, Dial of Destiny, Scream 6, the Super Mario Brothers movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, Renfield, Evil Dead Rise, The Pope's Exorcist, Magic Mike's Last Dance, Transformers, Rise of the Beast, Knock at the Cabin, Insidious, The Red Door, Plane, Cocaine Bear, Knights of the Zodiac. Definitely the worst. Those three are in a league of their own. Plane, Cocaine Bear, Knights of the Zodiac.
right. Going in, I was thinking like Pope's Exorcist for some reason. Like that was my go-to thought, because I felt like Pope's Exorcist, filmmaking wise, and when I said filmmaking, I wasn't talking just specifically.
That area is about where
I want talking
too.
specifically cinematography, because in my eyes, cinematography, most people say, oh, it's the different types of, it's the shots, but it's like cinematography is more of like how you're lighting each scene to make it look cinematic. And this movie does a really great job of that. But I'm saying, like, when you're choosing what kinds of shots or what you're seeing at any given moment and how that plays in, there's some stuff that I feel like it does a really great job at, like especially that I think that first act is really, really heart-wrenching. And I think it does a really good job to really get you in the eyes of like what it's like with these kids, what they go through. Like that stuff was fucking horrible as far as like what you're experiencing, and you really feel it. And I think who was it? Huevos, you said you cried. I cried. I fucking shed a couple tears for those kids because I felt awful. That was the best part of the
Where
movie.
does that
in my
end
opinion.
for you?
There's definitely sniffling.
But then when I get
theater.
to the second act, I was like, okay, now we're going
Not
back.
really.
Like the first act's like a lot of setup, and it's really like, this is what happens. This is the real world. This is like, let me pull the wool off your eyes type of thing. Then we get to the second act, and I'm like, okay, now this is starting to feel more like a traditional like movie, because I can
glad you
can
said
like,
that,
oh yeah,
Nick,
I've seen.
It almost didn't feel like a
I've
movie.
seen this
It was
movie.
like, what?
Right.
It's like not a documentary.
The
but
second
it's
part,
like
yeah.
not
But the
really a
second part felt
movie.
like this is a movie, because this is what you've seen this on every cop show. You see the cops, they're like, what's the plan? How are we going to place the plan? Like we talked about Mission Impossible last week. It's like, okay, this is the plan. We're going to lay it out. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to get this rich guy. He's going to fund this. Then we're going to get you start telling all these sex perverts, we're going to create this island, and I want all these kids to come on this island, and we're going to basically trap them on the island. And I'm like, okay, this feels like what I thought the movie was going to be a little bit more of. And I think that's the part where I'm like, I wanted a little bit more of like, let's go after the bad guys. And I don't feel like it hit as hard as I thought it was going to hit. And I was like, it felt, that's where the movie starts to dip into like plane territory for me, where I was like, okay, like it just felt a little too real world. And I know this is like, again, I talked about in the beginning where it's slightly fictionalized, and I'm making the point that like, as far as the movie goes, they do certain things to try to hook you in certain ways so that you're like on board with what the characters are doing. But that's where I was like, this feels like a traditional movie. And that was also when you start seeing Vampiro. But then there were parts where I was like, I wish it hit a little bit harder. I wish the, like, I don't know. There was something about that part that I was like,
yeah, but at the
doesn't
same
hit as
time,
hard for me.
I get what you guys are saying about certain parts being dialed up, which if you dial those parts up, then people are going to be like, that's not true. That's not true. But again, trying to maintain objectivity.
Well, where would you
to
well,
put
let's
it
just start with this.
below
Where would
like
you put
fucking to put it below like the Super Mario Brothers movie? We are in
I
different
struggle with
fucking
that too,
worlds.
because
Like to put
I
it
don't
below
like the
the
Super Mario
Flash,
movie.
like to put it below Air.
Flash was
Like
good.
I'm like
Air
I'm,
was
I'm like
good.
Yeah, but those are just like shameless fucking
Yeah, but that's where
that's like being
that's
like,
where I
oh,
have.
Schindler's List. We'll put Schindler's List
Yeah, but
below
this isn't Schindler's
Guardians of the
List.
Galaxy, and you're
That
like,
was my
are
point.
you
This
You
isn't
had
fucking?
told me a
Schindler's
second.
This
You
is
just said
closer to Schindler's List than it is to fucking Plane. I mean, that is so
that's where I
goddamn
struggle.
low.
That's where I struggle. It's like
In
I'm
top
like thinking
five,
about
I'm like,
Schindler's
yeah, it's
List as a
obviously
movie.
in the top five. Like, it's obviously a lot higher than fucking Dungeons and Dragons. You want to put it below Dungeons and
Char, what is it?
Dragons?
What is your argument based on?
Yeah, is it just because of the story? Because then you're like saying,
'Cause it
well,
seems
separate
like
from
you're
the
leaning on the
message, and if you're
story.
separating it from the
It's not
message,
that
then I
good
look
of
at
a
the
movie.
movie
Dude,
as is. And
I'm the
like,
guy
it's
who
not
always leans
that-
on the story. Like,
But it's not that
and
good of a story.
That's where I'm like,
and it's a
when it comes to
messily
this
told
movie,
story.
is it though? How is
Yeah.
it?
I don't think it's
messily
messy. I don't
told?
think it's messy.
It's
I just
messy.
think it's very.
How is it
Very
messy?
segmented.
It's very simple. It's a guy who does this for a living. He's told you can't go save these kids, so he quits his job to go
No, the
do
way
it. I'm
it's
saying
told
that.
is messy, not the story itself.
How is it
story
messy? How is that messily told?
Well, the beginning is way too long. And then there's random cut-ins of him and his wife. If they want to have her, great. I agree with you. They should have bolstered that part. But instead, they just like cut little like 30-second scenes of her like, yeah, you should go do it. Quit your job. Fine, whatever. And then it's like this weird back and forth of like what happened with the support from the DOJ or whatever. And then he's like, I'm quitting. And then roping in an investor. It's like it's all very like glossed over. And
here's what I think.
not very
We
well
put
told.
fucking Air really high.
Air's a good movie.
Based on everything you just said, we should put Air a lot lower.
No,
like this movie is clearly better and more effective than Air. Air's like one of the most boring movies of the year.
But it's very well put together.
So is this movie.
I had a lot of fun in Transformers, and that's really low.
Fun is irrelevant when you start to get to movies that are real fucking movies versus the Super Mario Brothers movie and the Flash that are just those are just cape movies at the end of the day versus these like real world better story movies.
Charlie, is that because
so you're leaning on the message?
Is that you're talking about the message versus the filmmaking? Because when I look at the filmmaking, it's
you say message, I say story.
They're not.
You say message, I say story. Regardless of like some real world movement to like stop some problem or whatever, the story alone, it is a well told story.
You can have a good story and make a shitty movie out of it. Doesn't matter.
That's always been my point. It's like you always harp on, oh, it's about the story. It's about the story. I'm always about like, right, you have to have a great story, but you have to tell that story in a very efficient way. But to put that
below Dungeons and Dragons, that's where I'm like,
I don't know. And again, I just don't really feel like it's.
Again, Plane.
I can't.
McCurdy wants to say the list is.
But when I equate this to something like Plane is near the fucking bottom because it's so bland. Right. This movie to actually move you to tears should automatically put it above something like fucking Air.
Just because you guys cried doesn't mean it should be at the top.
I didn't say the top. Towards the top, yes, because it can fucking move you to fucking tears. It's not like a funny movie can move you to tears, you know, but to actually tell this story effectively.
No, what almost got me to cry? The Flash.
Put it below Spider-Man.
I didn't almost cry in this movie at all.
I fucking cried during Flash. That's what I'm
saying. I almost cried for the Flash. I did not get anywhere near crying for this movie. It doesn't matter.
I mean,
2 versus 1, Char.
My point has been constantly, I'm trying to get to you, is that again, I've always been the person that's like, it's not just what the story is, but it's how you tell that story. And I just feel like after I watched this movie,
that's why Plane is low.
Okay, quit interrupting me.
The story of Plane is really good, but it's low because it's told really shittily. Shittily.
And that's where I'm not 100%. Like, here's the thing: when I watched this film, I was like, Nans, what you were talking about as far as how it feels segmented. This film does feel like, yes. Here's the thing: Hollywood movies do this all the time. You have you have act breaks in every movie, but sometimes to distinguish those act breaks, you will take your character and put them in different locations. That's how to distinguish. Okay, this is a break in the action. We are going to a different location. It signifies to the audience like, oh, this is another part of the story. This is the middle of the story. I think with this movie, because of what they're doing, I almost feel like there's enough in there to do those acts as they're almost their whole own story sometimes. And that's where it feels a little weird to me, is that Act 1's great, but it feels like a whole story. Act 2 feels like a whole story, and Act 3 also feels like a whole story. Usually in a movie, that's not how it feels. You definitely feel like things come together when you get to Act 3. And that's why it felt weird to me. I was like,
that's why I said at the beginning, like,
that's where I'm
saying is off.
Charlie, that's where I'm saying where it's like this movie, because that's when you're getting frustrated with us putting it low. And I know, but you just told us, like, separate it from the message of the movie, of what the movie's about. It's about the horrors of child trafficking. I'm looking at, okay, set aside that. Talk about what happens in the story.
I'm talking about where it's like, where does it donate now? Go to this website. That's the stuff I'm talking about. But like, you can't take something like, again, to bring up Schindler's List, you can't separate Schindler's List from the message, which is the Holocaust was really fucking bad and we shouldn't repeat it. You know?
No, I get that. I think like, what I'm trying to say is, like, if I want to put my snooty glasses on for a second, I would say that, like, my snooty glasses, and I know you're going to be like, oh, get off there, that's bullshit, is like the mise-en-scène of this movie, just like it never hits. It's just like I'm waiting for that moment to hit. And the only time it felt like it did for me was like that first act. And then the rest of the movie is like, okay, like it was frustrating when they got to the part where he's going to kill the Scorpio dude. And like, I was like, okay, are we going to see him kill? No, we're going to cut to black because we don't want to show violence. And I'm like, you've already built enough tension for me this entire movie that I want to see this guy kick ass at some point. Like show me that he was a Homeland Security officer and he was a badass. You can't show that to me because you want to say that she's not looking at it.
Maybe they're worried.
That was something where that was a moment where I felt like the movie could have gone harder, and it just decides not to. It felt like
I would have preferred to have seen it, and it would have been a good opportunity for Jim Caviezel to get some acting.
And Charlie, to your point,
they didn't show it.
Charlie's point earlier, though, Charlie, I understand to your point, because you did say this. You didn't want this movie to be very pandery and like the saying the Pledge of Allegiance or whatever. And I get that, because there are moments in this movie where it's like they could have gone that route, but we didn't do that.
You'd be like, oh God.
Yeah. There were moments where I felt like they could have gone there, and I was like, okay, they didn't go there. But there were again, this movie felt like
they did one time.
Watching it,
the only time they did was right at the end, where they translated what the song is, and the song has been singing, us, God's children are not for sale. I felt like waited to the end, and then that was at least. I felt like that was at least earned. Yeah. But again, I just felt like there were, because of how segmented the movie was, and I also felt like they could have made more. Like, it was almost like the screenwriters were like, here's the story we have. Okay, here's our third act. And then they just kind of botched the third. They were like, let's add this whole thing where they go to the jungle. And that's where the moments where I feel like, did somebody give a note to the writers and say, hey, we need to have this in there because this happens. This is a thing that happens in the real world that people are not aware of. We need to show Colombia and like this, the rebel side of it. And that's where I was like, yeah, I wonder if, because they had that added, it just felt like we have to add this extra third act of them finding the girl, which I wasn't like completely against. It just does feel a little weird when you're like, you're going through the whole movie and then you find out, oh, the daughter was sold to this other guy. And I'm like, okay, I guess we're going to do the same thing again. It feels like you're repeating beats when you do that versus it being like, my whole thing though, you guys saying towards the bottom, that's where I go, you're nuts. If you guys had said like middle high, or if you would have been like, how about just below Creed 3, I'd be like, that's reasonable. But to put it by fucking Pope's Exorcist, under Scream, under The Machine, like under Dungeons and Dragons, that's where I'm like, are you fucking nuts?
I am. Well,
it's not really a real movie.
Like Like,
how is it not a real movie?
Because it's
like
not
that's
structured like one. It's weird.
here's my compromise.
how,
Charlie, Charlie.
that's so
Here's the thing.
fucking bizarre to me. How is it not structured like a real movie?
McCurdy has covered it several times.
How?
It feels
The first
the movie
act
feels-
is the boy. The second act is recovering other kids. They don't get the girl, so then they find
And
out
I'm saying like
that the girl
could have been a whole movie.
the whole
Like, that
structure
middle
is
part
boy,
could have been
group
a
of kids,
whole
then
movie.
the girl. That's
Right.
that's
Right. When you're talking
That's
about an
the
arc
fucking
or a
structure.
story, that first, like, when you're talking about a whole story and an arc, like, the first act really feels not just like an arc. It doesn't feel like an act. It feels like that whole bit, that first, what was I, 30, 45 minutes of the movie? That felt like a movie. Like, that in itself felt like I was watching
Yes.
a whole arc of a movie. It was a horrible act, and it was like, yeah, it ends really badly, but it felt
Yes.
like a full thing. And then when we get to the middle, like, that's where I'm like, I think that's what this, okay, Charlie, here's my compromise with you, right? I feel like it's because when you mention Scream 6, that's a bad one on my part because I don't like that movie that much.
like you want to put this
some of these other
below Indiana
I don't want to put that.
Jones.
Yeah. When you say
Like,
it, then you're like, "Are you
You want to put it
crazy?" And I'm like,
below
"Yeah."
Shazam.
I think here's the thing. I think it's probably closer in
Shazam
somewhere
is
like
great.
the Missing Megan realm
Shazam
because
is
the-
good. I like Shazam.
I think it's in the Missing Megan realm, and here's why I think that is I do feel like you said, it's like when you talked about those movies, you always felt like the third act or the last part of the movie doesn't necessarily congeal as well as the rest of the film. And I'm saying I'm giving the movie compliments and saying like great first act. There were some
Yes.
other like nitpicky things, but I'm not going to go
Great
too
and
deep into those.
effective first
But it's a
act.
very effective first act that really hooks you, and you're like, this is why this is fucking important. The second act is pretty good. I do feel like we could have gotten a little bit more to that part. I just felt like they were holding back and trying to tell it. Like it felt like, let's cut a bunch of stuff out of the story so that we can have this other third act that didn't actually happen. That's this thing that happens in the jungle because we want to like keep the audience going with the like, oh, they did all this great stuff, but then
it is just as matter of fact as something like Air. Like, I'll agree with you. The second act is like, okay, we decided we were going to make a pervert hotel on this island. We get all our buddies together so we can bust all these perverts by making pervert hotel on this island. All this factual stuff, right? So it's like you have Miguel in the first part. That's all true. Him giving Tim the but again, like, the trouble is that the true and false stuff shouldn't weigh in. It shouldn't fucking weigh in.
Yeah, Charlie, I'm
The
not
third
saying,
act
Charlie, you're right. I'm not saying
fraudulent
that I'm not saying that it weighs
doesn't
in.
weigh in.
It doesn't weigh in. You're right as far as it being true or not. But when you watch a movie, sometimes you can see if
because again, Air is made boring.
This is going to sound pretentious, but sometimes you can watch a movie
more.
and you can feel like a movie is lying to you, and it's not 100% convicted to this. And that's where I was like, I'm not even using the right words, sorry. But I do feel like I wish the movie had focused mainly on the island story, and the island was the third act of the film. And that's where I felt cheated. Whereas like when I got to the end of the movie, I'm like, okay, like there's this bit about like him fighting this, like it felt like we're going in a completely different movie that almost felt like it was going to end as an action movie. And then we never got that. And that's what felt very strange to me, is that third act. Whereas like that middle part of the movie, it's like, yeah, there's a movie here. There is like I am up for a cop movie where it's like, how are we going to get the bad guys? This is the plan. What were the things that happened that got us in the like getting in our way? Oh,
it becomes like suddenly it's like Ocean's 11. We have our team. We have Tim. We've got our old pervert. We've got the billionaire, and then we have like the actual pervert. And we're gonna get this going, but then very quickly it's like, okay, we just have the hotel, quote hotel. It's like they find the island instead of a hotel. We're gonna do the island, and then we're gonna bring all these people out of the island. And it is fast paced. Like I feel that. I feel that with you guys, where it's like we are. It's like we're gonna bust these guys, and then 5 minutes later they bust them. And what I expected was like something that kind of confused me was that there was that moment, a really clever moment when they're busting everybody on the island, and they say this one guy, I'm just gonna call him Fatty, don't put handcuffs on Fatty.
Oh,
don't put handcuffs on Fatty. Yeah, we're gonna make it look like Fatty sold everybody out. And I was like, oh, that's great, because then what that'll do is, and he says he's sitting there. And he's like, Huevo says Bulldog. Bulldog's better. So it's like Bulldog. Remember, Bulldog wanted to have sex with little black boy, and he's like, Tim's like, no, you can't do that. And then they do the raid, and they arrest everybody. They put all the adults in handcuffs, and they specifically showcase Bulldog not being put in handcuffs, and they kind of walk away with him buddy. And the whole idea there was that they were going to trick all the other perverts into thinking that Bulldog was the one who sold him out.
He was the one who sold him out.
And then you expected there to be a moment where they then use that setup to get new information, where it's like, you got to tell us everything about Bulldog because he sold you out. And then they spill their guts. But that didn't happen. That was another moment of like, should have been something there. They kind of paid that off.
That's where the movie, like, it's like, I know you want to say like this movie's a credible movie, but like it's just like, and again, like I said before,
you could say the same thing about the book writer guy. It's like you could have got so much more out of him, and instead you get just Miguel, and
it's like I felt like
I don't think the first pervert. I don't think I see no problem with that. There was nothing left. There was no stone left unturned with the initial pervert. It was, I'm going to pretend that I want to.
The first pervert?
Nance just said it. There should have been more there. And
the book guy.
There was no stone left unturned there. It was.
They could have got a lot more out of him.
He used him to get to Miguel, and then Miguel led us to Rocio, and then that led to the rest of the movie.
So to Charlie's point, Nance, I felt like, remember how last week I was griping about you guys griping about the Uber Eats guy, and I was saying like that scene was to set up Tom Cruise and his mindset and what he was doing, right? That's how I felt about this, the scene with that character. My only gripe with that was it's a minor thing. And Charlie, I already have it in my head exactly what you're going to tell me. But I felt like the look that they gave that character was the most cartoonish. Like,
I agree.
What does a pedophile look like?
What does a pedo look like? He's got a mustache and glasses.
And I'm like,
no.
I mean, you guys saw Jared, the Subway guy, right, guys? Okay. But no. Yeah. Back to your point, though, Charlie. Backing up your point.
Obviously, my brain went to the same fucking thing. I was like, I wonder what this guy looks like in real life, because he's stereotypical.
He might have looked like
that,
and that's the thing. Maybe he actually looked like that, and they were like, "Oh,
they should have taken Jared out of prison and had him play that role, and then put him back into prison."
Right. No, but Nance, to Charlie's point, I felt like that scene set stuff up for the scene that we're talking about in the third or in the second end of the second act, where he, like, you already get the sense of like, okay, that's how we catch child predators. We pretend to be them to get the other child predators to open up, so that they're like more like, oh yeah, okay, you're one of us. Like, I'll show you how to get to this kid. And then he's like, gotcha, like he gets the gotcha moment. So that sets it up for the character that we know, okay, that's what he does. That's how he's gonna, that's the thing that he's gonna do.
The role of a pervert. Like,
and you see it do it.
God, can you imagine having to play a convincing pervert? And there's that scene where they're like, what are you into? And they ask the billionaire, and the billionaire's like, depends on the mood. But the looks that they give each other communicate this idea of like, you have to do it.
Yeah.
You have to put on that mask of, I'm a pervert, which means you have to showcase your darkness. That's the whole point of a movie like this, is that this guy, I mean, again, your job is you have to watch like hundreds, thousands of hours of child pornography. And that's the type of shit that is on my mind as I'm watching the rest of the movie. I'm not just seeing this guy as Mr. Cop Man.
Yeah, but that makes me think you're building more into the movie than what the movie gives out.
That's what the fucking movie gave. The first fucking scene with him is him watching all this child pornography and writing up these reports. The movie gave that. That was an essential part of, this is what my career is busting pedos. And then he's told, well, what's our concern of a couple of kids down in Central and South America? And they decide, we're going to do it. It's What is one more drop in the bucket? What is a couple of dead kids? Who cares? But he decides again, because the whole thing is, and that's why I say I wish they would have played up the moment between him and his wife, where it really becomes, that's where it would have been attacked for being a Christian movie. I don't know if that weighed into the decision, but the idea of when you meet God and God's like, why didn't you could have done something? Why didn't you do anything? He's like, well, because I wanted to be safe and secure. But that idea still comes across where it's, this guy has a chance to go make a difference, and he does. He doesn't just like OUR on Facebook. He fucking invents it, and then he goes and busts a bunch of fucking perverts, you know? So that's where I'm just like, I don't understand putting a movie like this below fucking Fast X. I really don't. I don't fucking comprehend that. Like, entertainment wise,
that's the story.
Like,
it's a great
explosions.
Story, but the movie's not that great.
I don't see that. I see it very well executed.
Well, McCurdy and I are seeing one thing, and you're seeing another.
Sure, I think you guys are fucking wrong, and I'll continue to stand up for it. I mean, I think something more reasonable is Above Air or below Tetris, because Tetris is very effective. Tetris, you know,
I think the highest it can go is below Missing.
God, like to put it below, like even Spider-Man. I just don't see it. I mean, even the flaws. I mean, we're talking about the year 2023, the year of just a whole bunch of fucking sequels and franchise movies.
That doesn't make this movie better.
I think it does. I think that this is like an actual fresh story.
Okay,
amongst
so I'm
something
gonna go
like,
between you guys. Here's where I would put it.
Putting it below Fast X.
Guys, thinking about it. Hold on. So to soothe as many people's concerns as I think this is.
You just hate children. You hate children. Yeah.
Okay, calm down.
Just kidding.
I honestly think maybe below Creed 3, because I think Huevos even mentioned that, and I think when I think about it, it kind of does make sense because
that's fair.
I think here's why I think it's fair. Okay, so Charlie, obviously you feel very like this as far as this movie's message and the story goes. It is a very compelling story. It did bring me to tears.
I want to hear from Charlie what's good about it besides the story and.
Yeah, and I think
I'm the guy who's only ever going on about story.
Hold on. But with Creed 3, like again, to my point about this movie doesn't bring the mise en scène, the fucking snooty glasses shit that I wanted in this movie.
It doesn't bring the $100 million budget.
It doesn't bring it hard. And it's not just the budget. It's just like you don't need a big budget. There's like a little bit of it, but like when you think of Creed 3. Like that movie had really great acting. I think some of the best, like this movie, I'm like
the best bad guy.
The main lead is like
history.
okay. The main lead's okay, and I think Bill Camp's great.
Okay,
but like
Creed 3 budget, and I've said a million times, budget should not weigh in. But for reference, Creed 3 had a budget of $75 million. The mise en scène. If we're nitpicking the fucking mise en scène. $10 million versus $75 million is going to buy you a lot of fucking mise en scène.
Right.
And for anybody who doesn't know, mise en scène just means like set design. It literally means
set design.
It literally means things in the scene. That's what it means.
Right. But it's also like how you set up the scene, how that scene plays out.
Yeah.
There's stuff, and I'm saying, and again, like there's
$65 million is going to do that.
There's stuff that the first act of this movie does real. Again, I harp on that first act because I do think that first act's very good. They're very well executed. First act's very, very well executed. The rest of the movie,
yes.
Again, like you said at the beginning, it's competently made. This isn't like, I'm not saying this movie is dog shit. By any means. It's competently made, but like again, I just felt like in comparison to Creed 3, I'm like, I think that's a very fair assessment as far as how this movie is. I know people are going to, critique us for like, why did you put that movie so high? I'm like, the movie is not that bad. It's not that bad of a movie. But when I'm looking at the other movies on the flip, I'm like, I would rather see a lot of other movies that are on this list, movies that are even lower, than try to rewatch this movie again. And not just because of the message, but I was like, at times I was bored of the movie. So it's like I'm like trying to weigh in between you guys. I'm like, I think below Creed 3 makes sense because at least at the end of the day, I could say, The Flash made me cry because it made us, all three of us, it made us cry at one moment because we really felt.
But
that
it's a
moment.
mess.
But
Like it's also
but
a
it's
goddamn
a
mess, and you can argue
it's a
that
mess.
this movie's a mess.
It's a mess
if you
in
want.
the it's that movie's a mess in the Maison Sin era because it's like it's got really shitty CGI and it's got all this other crap, right? And like, but this movie at least made me cry for something that I felt like I felt because I was like, oh my god, like I feel really bad for these kids. I have kids. Like I felt I was much more torn up inside with this movie than I was with The Flash by a long.
Well, why don't
shot.
we watch a documentary and put it on the list?
Yeah,
we should. I would. 2023 can be anything. Anything.
But
like
anyway,
that's why
I would
that's why I say
say
that I honestly wish that My Son Hunter had come out this year, because I would gladly rank it at the bottom, even though it's a
Right.
movie about, it's like this movie's about corruption in the White House and all that. And then you watch it and you're like, this is terrible. This is a really bad fucking movie. And I would legitimately put it at the bottom. This movie, I don't think is a like Pope's Exorcist level movie, because again, it's like the argument becomes, and this is what's fun about ranking 2023 or just annual movies in general, is that they're all very different, right? How are you going to rank something like we talked about Mission Impossible versus John Wick? Those are easy to rank against each other because they're both stunt porn, but one is more firmly rooted in story and the other is more rooted in stunt porn. So easily you can put Mission Impossible above it. But overall, you can have like high budget and low budget stuff. Like Knights of the Zodiac probably had a higher budget than Missing, but Missing is a better told story,
Yeah.
And
so again, Charlie,
when I
talked about Creed 3.
Tonight,
Hold on. When I was talking about Creed 3 and I was talking about this movie, it wasn't specifically, when I say Mise en Scène, I'm not specifically talking about Creed 3 versus this by the budget, and I understand one's a bigger budget, but when it comes to like really pulling at me with the last two acts of the movie, or the second and third act, I was like, it just didn't bring it as much as I think it should have brought it. And I felt
I feel that. I can totally understand that.
Do you see? But you see how also like that second act, the way that it's structured, really did feel like that was the last part of the movie. And then it felt like they ran out of time or they wanted more to the movie. And it felt like
there was that moment
the
where
island wasn't
the
enough.
He says, you hear that? That's it. And this is why,
I always say the end of the movie.
This is why I always say don't watch trailers, because trailers ruin movies. When he said that you hear that, that's the sound of freedom. I was like, oh God, please don't be the end of the movie. But then they have the follow-up scene where they say, he says, was Rocio part of the was she with the kids? And they say no. And then from there, it's like, okay, shit, where's Rocio? That's the whole mission.
It feels like we're starting a whole new story. Like once we get to that point.
But that's bullshit.
Part of me is like, I wondered if
that's bullshit.
It's not bullshit.
That's fucking bullshit.
It all goes into the pacing and structure.
Charlie,
it's just weird.
Though, when you talk about stories have 3 acts, right? But when you look at stories and as far as the micro of the story, like you break down a first act into another group of 3s, and that can break down to another group of 3s. So every scene has a first, a middle, beginning, and end.
The whole thing is trying to get this girl. The whole mission of the movie is to get.
And it felt
Rocio,
like we were tacking on another.
And
it
so
just felt like to me
suddenly,
like we were
suddenly fail
in
that,
another bit of conflict.
They're like, hey, we saved 54 kids. We may not have saved her, but we did good enough. And then he's like, nope, not good enough. We need to tack on a third act where I go get her.
And
that's not like bad
pacing.
That's not bad structure. That's proper fucking structure. That at the midpoint, you're going to go ahead and have a failure. That's good structuring of your movie.
That wasn't the midpoint of the movie, though.
What was the midpoint?
Midpoint, I think, was like when they... I'm just saying, like, that middle part with the
regardless of whatever rules,
that whole story was the middle part.
Regardless of whatever rules.
Okay, guys, I get it. You guys are talking. I know Huevos
was
talking about rules and all this stuff. I'm saying, from Nan's and I's perspective, when we watch this movie, the ending feels like it's an extra tacked on thing, that it doesn't feel naturally like we're progressing into a third act. It just felt like an unnatural thing. And if I'm looking at a movie and I'm saying, what do I feel like is wrong with the movie? That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say,
I would have preferred an extra 20 minutes of him stuck in that camp. I could have done with something. Another 10 or 20 minutes of him stuck in the camp playing doctor. playing doctor.
Yeah, that was short.
and then sneaking around.
Sure.
But like, let me look up. Let me see what the runtime
It's
is.
like 2:15, I think. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes.
It felt long.
It felt long to me, and if I was like,
It's
I wish
2:11.
that.
It's 2:11, and I did, and that's the thing. Like I wonder what segments you would have taken from one part of it and then moved it to the third act. But at a certain point, it's like he's going
Right, if we
in
do
and he finds
if we do
her.
the whole thing.
Charlie, are you saying if you were the editor, this is what you would come up with, or there's no changes you would make?
I think at this point I've said that the additions I would have appreciated would have been playing up the wife. What's the other one I said?
You said you wanted 20 more minutes.
Oh,
on
the moment where it was like we've arrested all the perverts, sir, and they didn't do anything with
the other
Doggy
guy.
Style
like
Man.
we don't see the payoff
Doggy
of
Style
that.
Man.
It's just like, yeah, it would have been nice if we'd seen the payoff of
Bulldog
that.
guy.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, like Bulldog guy should have led to where Rocio was. That's and that's just glue. That's just like act 2 to 3 glue should have been the fact that they say, hey, perverts, Bulldog sold you out. So tell us everything you know on Bulldog. And it's like, oh yeah, he sold this girl off to this guy Scorpion in whatever terrorist place. That's like the win of Act 2 should have led to Act 3, and maybe it did. I don't remember, but it should have. The idea of when you arrest Bulldog, don't put handcuffs on him because we want everybody to see that. That should have directly, very clearly led to Act 3.
And that's why I was talking about the first pedo with the book. I feel like this movie would have benefited from a very clear line through everything.
But the first pedo with the book did. That led to Miguel.
Yeah, but then that
led to him getting Miguel.
And then it starts a new thing.
Yeah, but no. What Charlie? No. Hold on.
We don't get
Charlie's
like a
right.
new perp.
Charlie's right in that. Okay, so remember the events of the movie, which it's another weird critique I have about this movie. I didn't. I'll get to that in a second. But in the movie, it's like he goes to the pedo, the book pedo that we talk about. Geppetto. We go to Geppetto, and I'm just gonna call him Geppetto because
I'm a real boy.
He's a real boy who loves real boys.
Shit. Yeah.
It's terrible.
Terrible
stuff. So he goes to Geppetto, and he tricks Geppetto into figuring out where this teddy bear is. Miguel is like his real name, right?
Yeah.
He finds out where he's at. That leads him to Mexico, where he's crossing the border. He finds him because he's like, I set this up. We're gonna bring this boy to you, and you'll have him within an hour. And it's
the white guy that bought him is renting him out.
So I guess he allowed him to talk to somebody to bring him there. So he brings the boy. Once he gets the boy, he questions the boy. They find out he had been abused and everything else. And then the boy explains his situation, his story, or how he had his sister. We find out all of that stuff. And then he realizes, oh, I have to go to this place. And it leads to the clues or the leads, much like in the Bond movies. Remember, like when we're watching any of these Bond films, what are you doing? Drinking?
That's for Huevos. Huevos like, how dare you drink water? And I'm like,
I need to drink water. But no, it leads. But Nance, that leads like in any Bond story or any detective story. Every clue is going to lead to the next part of the story. So that leads him to finding this woman who was doing the fake beauty pageant stuff, and that's how he's like,
which is based on a real woman apparently. Like a real woman.
So that's how that all ropes into how it gets there. I do agree, Nans. Like it does feel slightly choppy there, but like I feel like it's worse between the second and third act. And again, I am talking about why, to me, I'm expressing like what I felt like just didn't work for me in the movie, and I do feel like at times it felt slow paced. Huevos is going to say it was fine, but I've heard that from tons of people where they'll talk about a movie and they're like, it's easily paced, it was perfect, and then I go to see the movie and I'm
Huevos has also been
feels
saying
like it drags.
Oh, it's like doing away with normal movie norms.
And I tell people, I'm like, oh great, the movie broke rules. I'm like,
it's not.
It doesn't fucking matter.
That's not what's
because
but you don't get the sense as you're watching it like this movie's breaking the rules. You're just watching it.
So that's what's not happening.
Like
Yeah,
I'm
and
not.
again, but the
There
rules,
was
like the
nothing
book,
so
the
egregious
book
as I'm
rules.
It's
watching it
not
that I'm
breaking the
like,
rules like Quentin
oh,
Tarantino or something. It's
No, what
just
I'm saying
like
about
poorly
the book
structured.
rules is like this is all stuff. Like here's the one thing. A quick aside, really, about screenwriting books in general. All this stuff was never like planned out. Like someone was like, "This is how you do it." What happened was people started taking note of how great movies or movies that people enjoyed watching, what they did right, and
yeah,
then if people started finding point one or like started being like, "Oh, this was great because they did this at this thing." And then people started
yep,
writing it down and selling it as like the gospel is like, this is how you write a screenplay. And then everyone started following that. And then we get to a point now in Hollywood where everyone feels like that's exactly how you should do it. But the truth about it is as you're watching movies, you see the cracks in the movie because you realize they're like, why did I not like this? And then you realize like, oh, it kind of goes back to that thing that we talked about. Like Charlie said, the whole bulldog thing, you wanted to see a payoff there. We never saw that. And
yeah.
I
Those
even
are
if it
the
was
thing
something
that
where like
those register with me. Pacing issues never registered with me at all
it
in this
felt, and
movie.
that's where I felt slow with me. And that's where I was like, there's times where I was like, I feel like there should be more that happens here. And then there's times where I felt like this is way too long played out. So
Yeah.
it was just all over the place at times. And like again, when we talk about that second act, I wanted more of the cops trying to, okay, how are we going to set the island up? Because that's where to me I was like, it felt like they had, maybe there was a draft where that island was the third act of the movie, and I could have seen that. But I felt like maybe what happened was they wrote this script even with the jungle stuff, and that middle part of the movie was way longer, because I do think I saw something where they were talking about making the bad guys really bad, and you really saw the terrible things that they were doing, and they cut a lot of that stuff out. And so now what we have is like, okay, well, we have a shortened, the second act's a little bit shorter, so we can do more with that, like the last bit of the movie. But that's where I was like, I felt like maybe I wish that island stuff was the third act and maybe added another element to that island. But again, like that's my personal taste of it.
Like
Like I was
maybe it
just
would
like,
have been a little more streamlined, and because that's the thing, right? You start messing with the truth, and people are like, "It's all fake," and
yeah, because you,
and
like
then that's
Charlie,
how
to your
you
point,
can
so like the
ignore
island
it
did
or whatever,
happen.
and
Yeah, the island did happen. So it's like, well, yeah, then it's like, well, you're playing with the truth as to what happened on that island. Did people get
yeah.
shot? Was there, like you would have made a confrontation or something bigger in a sillier version of this
As I've
movie.
said
But
repeatedly, go ahead and lie to me to make a story better.
right.
I'm a-okay with that. With this, had it been the build up the pedo island thing a little bit more, and then have it just be plug Rocio into that, because the truth with Rocio was that she was kidnapped and then she was recovered 24 hours later. That's rare, right? Most of the time kids get taken, and I think like
24
48
hours.
hours
Oh,
is
dang.
is what they put on, like if your kid's gone for 48 hours, you're never going to see them again. And
I'm
that's
surprised.
that's kind of that's the tragedy that this movie doesn't. We all know as we're watching it, like we know the Titanic's going to sink. We know that he's going to rescue this girl, but like the reality that you have to contemplate as you're watching it is that if your kid is suddenly taken, unless you're Liam Neeson or Tim Ballard,
Mhm.
there's nothing you can do. They're gone.
Right.
You might as well accept that they're dead. They're probably not going to be dead for decades. They're going to be slowly raped into oblivion. But that's the sad truth, is like and they say that in the movie. They're like, she might be in Moscow by now. She might be in LA. She might be in
Right.
Bangkok. Like she could be anywhere on the planet. And that's the depressing thing. Like if your kid is just suddenly taken one day, who knows? But we have the privilege of being like, well, we're watching a movie, so clearly he's gonna find her. And I loved that moment in the jungle where he does find her, and even though it's fake, even though it's not real, but he has that moment where he's like, holy shit. Like he's that
So
realization
one
that he's
time in the
found the
movie was
girl.
like,
He
the one
cracks.
time the movie is like we're gonna say a bad word here. Like that was my feeling, because as I was watching the movie,
Yep.
I was like, I don't think I do think, like, again, I do think like the filmmakers have a much more faith-based thing, but they're like, we're faith-based, but we're edgy, so we're gonna say shit. And like when he says that, it's like it's an earned moment.
Yeah,
It makes
did
sense why he does it.
the ex pedo curse? Like he's the type of character
I don't
that would just
remember
curse
people
up a storm,
cursing.
right? But I don't
remember
recall
anybody cursing in this movie except for that moment. Like that moment stood out to
him
me
saying "oh
because-
shit" was like "oh shit."
oh
He
shit.
said
But
"oh
it was
shit."
like a genuine like, oh shit, that's you, like that, like it's very genuine. But I was like, it felt like the movie was like, we're not gonna
Yeah, in a
say
movie about raping
that
kids, you guys are worried about somebody saying shit, but okay.
Well, yeah, but even in
Cool.
that movie, it's like we're not gonna see that because everything's implied.
Yeah, okay, yeah, cool, great, yeah.
Okay.
So this
you can
movie
be-
should be
oh, we're
at
gonna
the
do.
top
We're doing
'cause
this
it's
now.
about child stuff.
This movie's
We're doing
number
this
one.
now.
This movie's
I don't
number
care
one.
about the
We're doing this
story.
now.
Number
I care
Okay.
about how
one.
they tell it, and I don't think they did a great job. But whatever.
We're
Here's
just
okay,
gonna- we're
Charlie.
just
And
gonna-
another
we're just
reason
gonna
I will
part
say,
hard on that because again I see something like, why is Air at the top then? If it's like
It's not. It's at
it's a
7.
boring fucking movie, but it's well produced, but it's a boring fucking movie compared to everything that we've said.
Well, that's
I
the
would be
challenge of
I would
ranking
be
a bunch of
A-okay.
movies that are completely
Sure,
different.
but I would be A-okay
I
putting
was
this
more
below
enthralled with
Tetris
Air than I
because
was this movie.
Tetris
Air's way better
Tetris
than
takes a
this movie.
simple story and blows it out of proportion.
Yeah.
This takes a simple story and blows it out of proportion and even makes some stuff up. So does Air. Creed, it's like I could put it around the arena of certainly above Flash, but in the arena of Creed 3, Air, and Tetris. Like I would say it belongs there. I could see it upwards of number 3, blowing out Guardians, because Guardians at the end of the day is like, yeah, well produced. It's a fucking MCU movie, but it's just like a movie about it is a
So
movie
you're leaning
about
on the
Rocky
message.
Raccoon.
You're doesn't
You say message, I
shouldn't
say
make
story.
be at the top.
You say message, I say story.
Okay,
Like,
so you're leaning too hard on what it's about. It doesn't matter to you that it's not as well made. You're gonna put on the blinders.
What
and say
is a
it's great
movie
'cause of the
about?
story.
What is a movie about, Nans? Like,
Okay,
that's
I'll
where
go film a movie about child trafficking in my backyard, and it'll be a list topper. Cool.
Go ahead and give it a try, and we'll probably put it just above Plane.
Yeah, that's stupid. That's the stupidest argument I've
You're-
No,
heard.
I think to Nan's point again.
You
No, I
guys
think
are
to Nan's
saying
point though.
just because it's a movie about child trafficking, I think it's the
No,
best
that's not what
movie
we're
ever.
saying.
That's
And
what you're
I
saying.
think you're
what
misunderstanding
you're saying.
me. I think you're
I
misunderstanding
know, and you're.
me
I think here's the
entirely
thing.
on
I think we are
What you're
far. I think
saying.
we're apart because you're like, no, the story's the best part, and I'm like, Charlie, if the story has shitty
They don't
acting,
tell the
like, does
story
that
well.
make it a good movie?
Where was there shitty acting in this entire?
Jim
You
Caviezel
guys say
throughhout.
Jim Caviezel's
I'm not saying
flat.
this acting was shitty in this movie, but I'm trying to make
I
the
thought
point
so.
here is that like when you look at other movies, it's like, is the acting great? If the acting's is superb, are you saying that like if a movie has really great acting, but then okay story, like then this movie would beat that movie?
That's why I'm
not
saying
really-
that this should at least.
That's where
at
I'm like,
least-
I think
this should at least contend with Air. It should at the very fucking least contend with Air, which is a terrible story, but really
just feel
well
like I'm looking-
acted. Air is such a fucking terrible story. We got a tennis shoe. We need the best tennis shoe by
enthralled- dude,
tomorrow.
I was
and a guy
all
just
in on
does it.
Air. Like
Air
I
was
really
great.
liked Air.
Air,
I thought Air was
Air
great.
is okay, but Air.
It's better than
Air
okay.
could have been a list
It's near
topper
the
if
top
it
of
would
our
have
list.
trumped up its story a little bit, or like embellished its story a little bit.
I
This
still liked Air a
did
lot more
embellish
than
the
I liked
story a
this
little
movie.
bit, but like my point is this. And you, I don't. I guess you still heard us, McCurdy, because you have your earpieces in.
I did. I
earbuds
told
in.
you I just got to get some water. I was listening.
Okay. So you heard what I said. I just like putting this below Flash. Like Creed, I can understand. Anything Creed and within the realm of Creed and above, I can understand. But like Flash, I'm just like, you guys are nuts. You guys are
No. That's why I said like where I would put it is below Creed 3. I think Creed 3 excels way more in a movie that I'm more interested in watching.
McCurdy,
Just
do you actually think
message
that?
aside,
'Cause you said the
yeah, I
post
do.
Exorcist at first, but now you're
I
splitting
just
the
thought
difference.
about it, but then like okay, here's the thing. Charlie does make a good point. It's like, would I want to put it next under Scream 6? And I'm like, no, because I think Scream 6 kind of sucks. And I'm like, okay, you make a very good point. Originally, I was
Even
thinking
within
Megan
the
and
realm
Missing.
of Scream movies, it's bad. It's the
It's bad,
worst
right.
Scream
Right.
movie there is.
My next step was like, okay, what about Megan and Missing, right? But I'm like,
That's why I was below
but
Missing.
it's not Megan and Missing. It's just the fact we have all these other movies, Fast X, Dungeons and Dragons.
I'm gonna let.
that are all these
Sorry,
big
I
I'm
movies
think
gonna let you
all
do
of
your
these
thing.
are real movies. This is not as much of a real movie.
And I still contend that like this movie feels more like propaganda than it does a movie. And I know Charlie's going to say, "Well, this isn't that thing." I'm like, it's propaganda for a good reason. It just feels more like it's
propaganda.
The movie to me feels like more like it's wanting to be propaganda than it wants to be a story of just tell the story and let everybody think about it, because I don't need somebody to tell a message about the movie or what the movie's supposed to be. I think people should be impacted by the art itself, which is what it is. Like, fuck that first act again. I'll keep talking about it. But again, like to point with Charlie and like where I put it, like think about it, like, yeah, between this and The Flash, this does a better job.
McCurdy,
but it does feel I do feel like
here's what I think is going on. You're willing to compromise so you can go to bed. And
well, I'm not going to go to bed. I got to go to work.
Okay. Well,
I got to go back out on the road.
Here's the other thing. Charlie's argument is not strong, but he's more insistent than
Charlie's
I
gonna
am.
come. It's like, you guys are assholes.
I don't know.
No, but
this is
he's
gonna push his point until he wins, and I don't give a shit at the end of the day.
This has always been my issues with like certain arguments, and my biggest issue with the argument that story is the thing that makes the movie better or not, is that yes,
that's
that
not
is
the only thing
that is like something that you definitely need to nail down to make your story sing, because I've been in movies where the
you have to have a good story, but you can have a good story and tell it badly and it's a shit movie.
And that's my point, is like,
that's my point too.
But I think like this movie, it's good, but it's not great. And I feel like people are mixing, and I feel like, yeah, Nans, I feel like you feel the same way.
Good, not great in a year of not great movies. That we're looking at a list of not great.
You're mixing what the message is.
The only
with the
movies
story.
that are
you
great
can't put
on
those,
this list are Beau Is Afraid and Infinity Pool. Those are great movies. Everything else is basically trash. Basically fucking trash.
So we might as well be doing a tier list then.
That's blasphemy on this channel. That is fucking blasphemy.
Well, that's what you're saying. It's like it doesn't matter because it's all not great. So we might as well put it high on the list because I liked it.
That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm arguing. Now you sound like fucking Scott. I'm arguing to put it higher than something that's boring like Air, where this is an effect.
And I disagree, and McCurdy disagrees. So are you going to compromise and come lower?
I already have. I would, because for me, I would probably, my highest would be number 3.
What's your lowest?
You guys said Pope's Exorcist.
What's your lowest,
a huge fucking spread. My lowest is, I already said, my lowest is below Creed 3. That's what I've said that repeatedly. I think that this movie is
my highest is below Missing.
Guys, that's where I'm at. I think it's below Creed 3. And I think here's a couple of reasons why I would put it next to Creed 3, right? One, I think Creed 3 has some of the best acting of all the movies on this list. I think like some of the acting shines better in Creed 3 than it does even Air or Tetris. But
sure,
much like this movie, I feel like Creed 3 does feel like it's not hitting as hard as it can at times. And it is by a director who's
that
like still new at learning it.
Better than this movie.
And with this movie, Sound of Freedom, I feel like there are moments in this movie that it like a screenwriter would have been punching certain aspects of the movie up to make it work a lot better and make you really get into the movie. Not only like what I wanted out of this movie was I wanted to fucking feel for those fucking kids, which I got that, but I also wanted to be like on the side of Tim Ballard to the point where I was like, go fucking get him, dude. And I know maybe Huevos, you might have felt that way. Maybe K1 felt that way. I didn't feel that way. I felt like I was just observing. I wasn't engaged with him doing it. That's why I would say it's.
I agree.
That's where I would say
we can all agree.
I think that's where I'm at with being under Creed 3. I just feel like Creed 3, on the other hand, I'm on board with Creed. I'm like, I want Creed to win this fight. And I feel frustrated with who's the character who Jonathan Majors played. I'm frustrated with how he's treating, but I do feel like with Creed 3, the biggest issue I had with that movie was that they set this up in a great way, but then when it came time for him to bash Creed, they played it too safe, and they could have gone farther with how he destroyed him. Instead, we got the story about his adopted mom and how she died and how she was going to die, and it felt like, okay, but I want more of Jonathan Majors. I don't want more of this.
Yeah.
And that's where I felt
I want to, like we said in that episode, it's like,
correlate.
make me hate Jonathan Majors. Like, let's go into this epic fight. And instead they kind of, they made it, they softened it because they needed to redeem him by the end. And it's like, okay, I guess so. But you still could have made us really hate him.
So,
leading
McCurdy,
up to
you're
it.
saying you were talking about getting sucked into a movie. Were you not sucked into The Flash with Barry and what's going on with him and having two of them and helping the new one learn the powers?
The thing that I agree with Charlie on, is that, like, that's a movie where I think Charlie and I see an eye in eye, where I've always been a proponent. It's like, you got to have a great story, but you got to tell it in a really great way. And I feel like the story is not supported by everything. And, like, for instance, like, again, the CGI is dog shit in that movie. There are moments in that movie that look absolute dog shit.
Yeah, but we say sometimes that doesn't matter.
You can say that it doesn't matter, but, like, I felt like if you want audiences to be gripped into the story, like, you can't have those moments where you're looking away. You can't have those moments where you're like, oh, this looks like shit, you know?
Kind of like the fight scene in this movie where we don't see anything.
That, again, like, that was the one moment in the third act where I was like, oh, they could have gone harder there, and they decided not to for whatever reason, whether it was like whatever it was personal reasons for, like, if they wanted to. Sure. And again, one's a science fiction story. This is about a real life thing. I just think that's the perfect compromise between you guys. I think
I think
is not a bad spot.
Like, Nance, I don't think you're wrong in thinking that way. I really don't. I'm coming from the perspective of, like, oh, this is around this should be below Evil Dead Rise. And I go, are you fucking nuts to put it below Evil Dead Rise?
Charlie, when you say that, I was like, oh yeah,
even having it contend with The Flash, I'm okay with that. Because my whole thing with The Flash was I went into it being like another DC movie that is probably going to be garbage. I was a big fucking fan of The Flash. I really loved it, even though it was really messy and had terrible CGI, but I didn't care. I made a point in that episode of saying you could easily point out all the bad CGI, but I never cared one time because the story was on point. The difference, it just becomes weighing the story of that versus this story. And so just looking at story, like, let me objectively look at The Flash versus that. The Flash is a story about letting the past go, stop trying to fix things like that. I thought that was all nailed, but it was messy. I did think it was messier at the end of the day. All the things that we've been kind of nitpicking about this movie, where it's like the punch up the wife a little bit, punch up the bulldog guy a little bit, kind of connect our first, second, and third acts, like bridge them better a little bit. I still can't help but I know you guys have been saying Creed 3, but I still can't help but, like, compare it to Air. That's just at end of the day, that's where I keep going, is comparing it to Air, where end of the day, Air is like, our market share is 1/3. It'd be great if our market share was 75%. And then by the end of the movie, it's like, we got it. We got our 75% market share, and all the shortcomings about, like, maybe this moment could have been punched up, or that moment could have been punched up, I think pales in comparison to this movie. That's why, for me, my compromise would be putting it below Tetris, which is a very effective movie, the type of movie that really pulls you in and gets you on the side of the protagonist, and you understand the stakes, like, because they are similar movies. If we're gonna like, real quick, let's just compare Tetris
with Air and Tetris.
Air, Tetris, and Sound of Freedom. It's okay. You're gonna give up if you do this. You're gonna give up. There's a relation there, right? You're gonna give up your pension. You're gonna give up your house. Very early on in Tetris, it's like, if you fuck this up, the bank is going to take your house and your whole family's going to be
The
destitute.
stakes are barely there in this movie.
No, but let's compare it though. Let's compare it to let's compare it to Tetris. Tetris is like, if you fuck up, the bank takes your house. Those are the stakes, and you get reminders of that throughout the movie.
Yes.
Air was like, if we don't get Michael Jordan,
the company goes under.
No, it wasn't even the company goes under. It was like Nike's not going to be
Matt
the
Damon
best
loses
shoe
his job.
Yeah, and it's like he doesn't even have a family. Like there it was like Matt Damon.
Well, yeah, but
will, like,
I think that's also saying
suffer.
that like there's multiple people that are going to lose their jobs if
it's a whole team of people.
It's a whole team. It's not just one person losing their house and job.
They hardly humanized it. Like McCurdy, you made the point very early on in this show, this episode, where it was like, if you have a bunch of people, you have a room full of people that are going to lose their jobs, you have to specify it.
You have
to have these people are going to lose their jobs.
It's like the thing I critiqued with the first Dalton movie with the
Living Daylights.
With Living Daylights, when they go to Afghanistan. The thing I criticized one of the things I think the movie fails on is that we don't humanize with anybody from Afghanistan in that movie. And because of that, like, I just didn't care the rest of the movie. But back to this. No, I think, Charlie, you make some good points. I think it's just when it comes down to between these two movies and how Mans feels and how I feel like I'd rather go see Creed 3 again than I'd see Sound of Freedom. And I would also say, here's the other thing. I would also say that with the Sound of Freedom, I would expect if this movie is coming out and saying we want to be the next, this movie wants to be Uncle Tom's Cabin. One, I feel like there was a bad mark on the filmmakers to say we got to put this message at the end of the movie because you've already gripped everybody who wants to go see this movie anyway. I don't think you needed that. Second, I feel like again, putting on my snooty glasses for 2 seconds. Hold on 1 second. There we go.
In terms of snooty movies, glasses. I would rewatch snooty it. About ends at Spider-Man.
If I put my snooty glasses real quick, if I'm talking about these movies, this movie ain't no Schindler's List. And I feel like, and that's the point I was trying to get to. Is like if it was Schindler's List, that's a movie that I'm gonna tell people, like tell the class, like we got to go fucking watch this movie. It's an important movie to fucking watch. And I want to say that with this movie, but I also feel like it doesn't bring the artistic bullshit that I want out of a fucking movie enough to be like, this movie's incredible. And again, all the points I said before about the second and third act and all that bullshit, I just feel like, Under Creed 3. I think it's a very fair assessment because I guarantee you most lists on here online are not going to put it that high. And I feel like we're at least giving us some acknowledgement. That's why my earlier, when I was like, don't show me all this Fox News stuff, because I would rather just talk about the movie in itself and just judge it like, what is this a good movie? Is it a bad movie? I don't give a fuck about QAnon or whatever, whatever it's attached to. And I know I was harping on, like, is it a true story? My point is, I just want to clear things up and say, like, look, I'm not on the side of just saying, like, I'm someone who just sits around and watches Fox News all day. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, like, let's just put that shit aside. Let's just talk about this movie.
I am frequently accused of, like, you just watch. I don't watch Fox News. Nobody our age watches Fox News. But this is
I'm saying that as
the problem I'm getting at, though, is that people, the moment you start talking a certain way, people assume things about you. And that's why I put up all those images, because those images, my intention was to be like, some people say this movie's being sabotaged. Other people are saying it's not. And I would say, if you think the movie's being sabotaged, I think that's kind of stupid. In the same way that,
I would say it's being bolstered artificially.
Exactly. That's my point. I'm trying to be objective, and the two of you accuse me of, like, you're just bolstering one side. I'm not trying to do that. I'm legitimately trying to judge this movie on its merits. And if you think it's bad in some regards, I think it's bad in those regards too, and then it's good in other regards. And it's like, if you're gonna put this movie up against, again, like, Dungeons and fucking Dragons, that's where I'm just like, it's clearly above that in my book, at least.
Well, no, when you started, like when I said post Exorcist, again, that was like my gut reaction to just coming out of the theater, not really thinking about it. But then when you started pointing out Scream 6 and all these other movies, and I was like, oh yeah, that movie.
And that's the
And
fun
that's when I
thing
said. That's
about
when I
judging
said
a
when I
bunch
came in
of
here, I was like,
disparate
it's
films.
probably towards the. You're probably going to want to put it towards the top,
Yeah.
but I didn't think it was like Beau Is Afraid top, because I think both of those movies have life messages and they're perfect. They're just
Like
movies that are
this.
like.
The reason I brought this up is because, like, this is the type of shit where it's like, okay, Jim Caviezel, what does he know? You watch interviews with him, and he's like a stuttering fool. I do love the guy, but he's kind of a stuttering fool. And he says that the CIA is doing this. The CIA has done fucked up shit for like 60 years.
For a plethora of reasons too, like that we don't know of.
Exactly. In the Quantum of Solace episode, I said that we as Americans, we benefit by the fucked up shit they do. Like the CIA will tell you, we do fucked up shit, but at the end of the day, you don't hear about the good things we do. You only hear about the bad things we do. Like, we don't get any credit. Like, one of my favorite scenes in a movie on this note is the Kingsman, where, remember, he goes into what's his name's office, and there's all these newspapers on the wall, and every newspaper is the headline from the following day where he's saved the world. And it's like puppy takes a poop in a park, and he's like, isn't that great? Like, the headline is the puppy takes a poop, but in reality, everybody almost died. And that's the thing. It's like the CIA does a bunch of fucked up shit, but they're looking out for America, and then sometimes the rest of the world. And then I showed this shit where this is fake. Somebody said we were instructed to put this chemical into the drinks of.
You know what that looks like?
It says there are we had to put nanobots into the drinks of people watching this movie. That's clearly absurd. And yes, some people cling on to that. But my whole point was to show that there's a media circus going on with this movie. I don't care about any of that. I am really trying to judge the movie objectively, regardless of that shit. And I have a hard time being like, this very serious movie about a guy going down to Central and South America to rescue kids should be below Shazam. Like, seriously, I'm just like, I think it's told well enough to be above fucking Shazam, where what's her name is floating around on a dragon being like, I'm gonna kill you all. Like,
wait, what she says it like, you will die or whatever.
Yeah. I really have a hard time putting this below fucking Shazam.
But that's why I'm saying, between Nans and I, and between you, I'm like, yeah, I get to your point, because after you said that, I was like, okay, I get what you're saying. And that's where and again, I felt conflicted, because after I saw the movie, I'm like, you know, I'd see people that are like, oh my God, this movie's great. It's the best movie ever.
You said this movie scarred you. You said that. I heard you.
It made my dad cry.
Which means it's effective. It's
Sorry,
effective,
Dad.
But how effective is it? And it's
not
like,
very.
My whole argument would be that it should be the top third versus the bottom third.
Sure.
And I personally would put it. Like I said, I could see it as
put it
high
higher.
as 3. Like, personally, I could see it as high as 3, even though Guardians has, like, Guardians is like, that movie was great. Like, again, everything having to do with Rocket, like, it is the Rocket Raccoon movie. All that was great. Mission Impossible, fantastic action with like a really unique story that hopefully will be paid off in the sequel, that just barely beat out John Wick, which is like incredible action. Tetris, which is a great story that is dialed up enough to enjoy, even though it might not be completely accurate. It's just a well-made movie about a beloved video game. Air, about a beloved shoe. The oddball movie of this list is certainly Air.
Extremely well-made and acted movie.
I think it's a well-made acted movie, and it's got again, when you look at the cast on Air, it's like some of the best actors in Hollywood, or some of the most iconic people. And I think but for me, it was a movie that I was like, I am so up for sitting.
I really enjoyed and would rewatch
movie.
Sure.
And sometimes I was like, I was very much enthralled with the whole story, and I was like very much engaged, and I was like, oh man, I really hope he gets it. And like, yeah, you know he's gonna get it at the end. But like at the same time, I was like, I loved the play of how they got it. Like I loved how they set
the reason why it's below Tetris, though. The reason why it's below Tetris is because it is too matter of fact. Like again, every episode I go back to that moment where Ben Affleck's like, it's like we really need this thing to happen, and Ben Affleck goes, yeah, fuck it.
Fuck it. Yeah.
Fuck it.
Yeah.
And it was like,
that's. But yeah, and when I'm comparing it again, like that's why I am more like, and then when I think of Creed 3 and I think of that movie in its entirety, and then I think of this movie, I'm like, as far as Sound of Freedom, I'm like, yeah, I think Creed 3 beats out Sound of Freedom, honestly. That's how I'm at. That's where I'm at. And
I'm A-okay with that.
Easily.
You can live with that. Like that's the thing where you can live with. And that's where I feel like I could live with it being under Creed 3 and I wouldn't feel bad about it. I'd be like, no, that's actually a decent spot to put it in.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I just again
I feel bad about it, but it's not my list, so whatever.
Fuck you.
What? I don't like this movie.
No, you're being a little whiny baby.
No.
This is all of our list. That's the whole point. You're being McCurdy when Secret Service wasn't
this
put at the top.
movie is not good. It should not be near the top.
Well, that's why now you're officially in the minority because McCurdy thinks it should be, you know.
McCurdy was swayed,
I'm at least.
so
here's the thing. I'm acknowledging that that Nance didn't think the movie was that great. Charlie, you thought it was much better than where it's at.
I don't know if I would put it in the great category, but this 2023 hasn't been great. That's the whole thing.
Depends on your. I think
top third. I'm middle third.
There's definitely. But here's the thing. There's definitely movies on this list that are like lower, and I can acknowledge that they're lower. That I would definitely want to go watch again. Like I definitely want to go watch Super Mario Brothers again. I definitely want to watch Missing, and I probably want to go watch Missing again. I would probably enjoy watching Spider-Man. I still haven't seen Asteroid City. I will probably do.
What did you say, Nance? You said Spider-Man is like your cutoff for rewatchability.
Yeah,
I would agree. Like
below Spider-Man, I'm like, I don't need to rewatch any of that.
I think we started talking about this in the Discord, but I think people are like, oh, this isn't a great year of movies. I'm like, dude, we're doing something that we normally never do. And sometimes if you watch every movie that comes out that year, you're gonna get a different perspective on like movies in general. I feel like every year there's gonna be great movies and there's gonna be crappy movies and there's gonna be okay movies. And like you just kind of forget about it from year to year, and every year you're like, oh, this has been like you can look at it as a glass half full, glass half empty situation. You can be like, oh, this movie this year was crappy, but I'm like, hey, did you watch every movie? Because there were actually some really good movies this year. Instead, people look at like 5 movies they saw this year and they're like, they were all bad. I'm like, okay, well, you chose poorly, you know.
I mean, I think with this, it's like it's weighing in the effectiveness of, you know, again, it's like
we missed
the effectiveness of the Taken pieces of it, where it's like you know, this impossible mission of because like I said, for most people, it's like your kid is just gone, and what are you gonna do about it? You know. Right. Like, what are you going to do? And it's just like, it's impossible to track them down.
And those are the things where I was like, I know you said earlier, like, I didn't want it to be like the very over the top pandering movie. And there were times where I was like, can you pander just a little bit to the crowd at the right, please? Just a little bit. So I get my, like, because everybody loves an Arnold Schwarzenegger, like, badass movie. Come on, like, give me just a little, just
sure,
give me a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And that's what I was missing. I felt like the movie, I felt like the movie made some smart choices and not going too hard in certain sections, but other times I was like, I kind of want Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like I kind of wanted that. I was like,
yeah,
I thought, that. And I seriously thought, like, seeing the trailer, I was like, was this going to be that Taken movie? Like maybe not an action movie, but like action light, you know, something. But
thanks, Huevos. Lots of kind comments from Huevos.
Yeah, thanks,
Huevos. I'm actually like, I'm such
Huevos
a dumb fan.
is the only one with us at this point, I guess.
He's a diehard.
Yeah. Huevos.
Thank you, Huevos.
Huevos, you should make a rap song about
Huevos. Huevos to us is like the little girl that we just have to save.
Yeah.
Everyone else
and
is Miguel. Like whatever.
And then we're gonna rape.
Yeah.
Wait, McCurdy, why is your
His mic is gone now.
What's wrong with your mic?
Does his love have a battery? Oh, I hear that.
Yeah.
Check.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
okay.
works.
That was weird.
Okay. Yeah, it was weird.
Okay. No, I was saying that.
God, Huevos.
No, what I was saying was Huevos was like, I like action, but I was like, with this movie, it was almost all set up for that. Like I was waiting for it. It's like you've got a guy who's Homeland Security, and you've got
It's like
going
that
on a
gif
mission
of
to
the
save
truck
kids.
that keeps barreling towards a safety barrier and never hits it.
Not all this stuff.
Yeah.
Everything's there.
Like, come
Everything's there
on!
for this. Everything's there, and then it's just like it would be one thing if this movie was like Air, where it was like I didn't expect to have action in the movie, and like there wasn't, and I was fine with that. But like this movie is like I wanted a little bit of action, and I felt like I was cheated out of that. It's such
Yeah, again, that's
minor
that's
thing,
why
but
that's
again,
why for me
like,
it's
it could have
right
driven
there
things
with
home a little
Air.
bit more for me.
That's why for me personally, I think it's right there with Air, where it is matter of fact. It is accurate with a little bit of trumped up truth to it.
And that's why
whereas
it's below
Tetris
Megan
really
for me,
trumped up.
because Megan had a robot fight, and I like robot fights.
Oh God. These are the times where I just remind you, Nans, that your IQ is like right at 100. Right at 100.
Damn. That's horrible. That's horrible. That's horrible.
But yeah, are we settling in on number 9?
I think we're settling.
Whatever.
Yeah, we're settling right under Creed 3. Right.
Okay. All right.
I think
that's fair.
I think it's fair.
I
Like
think
everyone's
that's fair.
happy. At least you can walk away and you're like, I can go to bed at night. That's fine.
Yeah, because and one of the things is this, that
Yeah,
the moment that you're going to put freedom in your title, you're automatically signing yourself up for like one of the most obnoxious things about living in this century is that we've made freedom a bad word. Like if you the moment you invoke freedom, it's like, yeah, there you go. There's your fucking tinfoil hat. It's
Hold
like
on. Where's my hat?
freedom is like, because all these cynical assholes are like,
McCurdy's hat.
freedom is
got a
bullshit,
nice
man. Like, we're not free. We still have to go work jobs. It's like, yeah, no, you're free to work a job, dude. Like,
Right.
I
think
would you rather be a slave?
That's a whole other conversation, but I get
Yes,
where
it
you're
is.
coming at. But that's where it's like that's the pandering that I feel like the movie at least kind of ties into, because it's like, how do we get the audience that, like, again, this movie is directed towards a certain audience, and it definitely succeeded in getting
Is
that
it
audience,
though?
because that audience
Is it directed towards a
it
certain
has.
audience?
I think it
Like,
has.
Who is it
Definitely
directed towards?
Charlie people.
Yeah,
Charlie
like
people.
but like, is it like you're a religious person? Is it directed towards religious people, or is it directed?
I think it's directed towards.
Like, I don't think it's directed.
What was that quote? Hold on. What was that
right-wingers.
one quote by the Guardian quote? Was the dads who have earworms, QAnon earworms?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's close. That's close.
Earworms.
I wouldn't put it exactly like that.
This
Yeah,
is
Dads
exactly what this
is a
movie wanted.
superhero movie
I bet that the
for
producers
dads with
were
earworms.
involved in getting this all started. They love this shit. This is what's getting them ticket sales.
Yeah, Charlie, I'm just saying, like, again, here's my take.
Well,
on
that's
it.
the
Like-
easy
like-
conspiracy
like-
thing is like, I bet the people making the movie are the people that are trafficking kids.
I'm
And it's
not
like,
saying
okay,
that.
but who
No
are the
one said
people
that.
saying don't see the movie? The people saying
No.
don't see the movie are the established. Like, if you were the establishment media, the best thing you could do is just ignore the movie. That's the best thing you could
Right.
do. Why are they outright saying don't see it? That's fucking weird. That's where
Because it gets
regardless
people excited.
Okay,
regardless of
but let
your
me-
And it makes
beliefs,
people watch
though,
the show.
regardless
Let
of
me put
any
another
political
quick-
affiliation,
all
you
about
should be
money.
like, that's kind of odd. That's a weird thing. You should just ignore it.
It's weird
Right.
at the end of the
Okay,
movie, they
but
say, go
here's
buy
another-
movie
here's
tickets
another
for other
perspective.
people. Use this
Again, this
QR
is another
code.
No, Nance, I
conversation
get
for
it.
outside the
Dude,
list.
I completely get
It's
it. That like
all weird.
any cynical person is going to be like, okay, this is getting them a lot of exposure. Dude, like, and that's what I mean. don't think I'm immune to that. I read that loud and clear as he's sitting there being like, "Hey, right now you should buy tickets and send them to everybody else that you know." I'm cynical by nature. If I haven't fucking proven that by now, I don't know what will. I honestly don't know what will. Cynicism always kicks in for me. That's how my brain works. But you guys, for some reason, think that I'm like, no, like I bought tickets for grandma and everybody else. Like, that's not how my brain works. My brain is constantly thinking, what's the catch? What's the catch? That's me. That's always been me. But all the same, I still see the movie as objectively better than Fast fucking X. I just do.
Nah.
Well, Nancy, you have a track record, and your track record
love Fast X
speaks for itself. You know, I do too. I love Fast X.
I think Nans is very much he wants to go to a movie. He wants to be entertained. You and I want to be entertained, but we also want our brains to be tickled a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
And not everybody appreciates that. Some people think that every movie
this movie
needs to
did
be...
neither.
There's a reason why Beau Is Afraid is at the top, because when I left that movie, I felt this fire in my mind. It wasn't just tickled; it was on fire.
But you were
I was like,
entertained.
God damn, that was such.
I think
Beau Is
Nans
Afraid was insane. Yeah.
Nans,
Yeah.
let me get this. You liked Beau Is Afraid more than Infinity Pool, though, didn't you?
Yeah, I did not like Infinity Pool.
But you liked Beau Is... Yeah, because I think like Beau Is Afraid was a lot
Beau
more
Is Afraid.
fun.
I actually liked Beau Is Afraid.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm looking at the list. I'm like, I don't know what... A lot of these movies I liked. Like, I didn't outright hate. I remember liking Cocaine Bear. Plane, it was a movie I was just kind of very on the fence with. I liked Insidious: The Red Door. I didn't hate it.
Indiana Jones is about where I start disliking movies.
Okay.
Scream 6 is a movie where I was like, I wish there was more to it. I didn't completely, but I
didn't dislike Scream.
I didn't dislike
I didn't either.
Superman. I didn't dislike
I dislike
Super Mario or Ant-Man.
Ant-Man
for
was
me,
like,
once we
Renfield
get to knock at the
was
cabin,
bad. I like that.
Once we get to knock at the cabin, that's where I want to start committing mass murder.
But I liked Knock and Transformers, and
I had a fun
nothing
time
below
at
those.
but I could definitely see that it's not the best movie in the world. I was bored by the end of Transformers. That was the only thing
I would rewatch Transformers.
Yeah.
It
So
was
anyway,
like,
I'm gonna put,
I did say that this was the better Transformers movie out of all the ones. It was one of the better ones for sure.
First couple Shias, Bumblebee wasn't bad, if I remember.
I think the first Shia is good. The second one's not great.
No, okay.
First Shia.
I don't like Revenge of the Fallen. I think that one's terrible. But Kevra will always argue with me that he thinks that the third one's worse than the second one. I'm like, no. I think, yeah. Anyway,
Third one.
who are we toasting to?
I
Who do you
think we
think we're
should toast
toasting
to
to?
all the children acting in this movie,
Okay.
because none of them were bad child actors. They all did a good job.
So
Were they not bad?
you're
Here's-
saying FTK. You're saying FTK for the children.
Toast to all the
I'd actually had already say to slide for Tim
that are
Ballard
no
for,
longer
for
trafficked.
saving these children, but I
Okay.
figured that's who.
No,
we
let's
would be
Good
do
job
that.
saving the children. Hopefully you didn't actually do something bad to a coworker, but we'll see.
Is
Why would
that
he
a
do
thing?
something?
Dude, like every hit piece.
That's why he
every
left
time something like
OUR.
this happens, every hit piece is like, did you know he actually raped his grandma? Did you
At
know
least
that?
he saved 300 kids. All right.
Look away when he saves all these kids that were raping. CNN producer who's covering up for his crimes. Even if he's a one-off, it doesn't matter. He's still a CNN producer who's raping children. Don't
I
look.
don't see the
don't
relevance
don't
of the
look
story.
below. Don't look below the beyond the curtain. Don't look behind
Right,
the
I don't-
curtain. We
It's not a
control the
one-to-one.
truth.
Thanks.
This is why.
Okay,
this is why
anyway,
Tomorrow Never
this
Dies
one's
sucks.
for Tim.
Once
You love
again.
him, you hate him. He saved kids. Okay, like I don't,
Yeah.
Good
I
job
don't give a
saving
shit
kids.
about all the stupid theories or whatever. Like
Yeah.
the guy at least is, trying to do something. Whether he gets criticized or I don't believe his beliefs.
While
or whatever.
the
I
rest
don't give
of
a
us
shit.
just wake up every day and we go to Starbucks and we
Right.
drink our caffeine and we go to work and we punch a bunch of numbers into a fucking meaningless spreadsheet. This guy quit his job to go save at least 2 kids. And for that,
Well,
At
he
least a couple
supposedly
hundred, right?
apparently it was like 124 people that.
like
that
I
he
said,
saved
at
from
least
sexual
2
trafficking.
kids, and then he gets shit on by a bunch of
Have you guys ever saved
pedophiles.
anybody?
I saved a fish one time from
I
dying.
think I did actually.
McCurdy, I want to hear about it.
Yeah,
I
McCurdy's
saved the
also
guy from
procreated,
drowning in
so-
Hawaii.
It's literally not that exciting. It's just calling 911, which is all. Sometimes it's all you have to do, and some people are like,
I'm
"Oh
gonna
my
go
God,
play a
good job."
game where you're a goose and you have a gun. So if anyone wants to watch me live stream that,
I'm gonna go
crap
make some money. I don't
after
know about
this
you guys.
movie,
I'm gonna go
talk.
make some
oh
money.
my god!
I'm gonna go eat a quesadilla. So
Oh, you're all about
Quesadilla?
those.
It's
All
a
right.
quesadilla,
Anyway,
Charlie.
for Tim Ballard,
Is this?
they're
our
gonna make a
longest
sequel to this
stream?
movie. By the way, they've already planned. Jim Caviezel was like, "Yeah, we're gonna make a sequel, and then I'm gonna play Jesus again."
That's
in
why I
the
was saying the
Resurrection."
ultimate winner of all of this is Angel Studios.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they
Yeah.
make money. Oh, did you know that by promoting this positive
Oh
stuff,
my
they
God.
make money? Not like
All right,
Hollywood
so-
makes billions of dollars every
Hopefully
year.
they donate
All
the
right, so
money.
here's
But they,
Tim.
they do good
Thank
things
you
and they
for
make money.
saving the kids.
So that's
We
bad. Whenever
appreciate it.
somebody makes money, that's bad. So anyway, to Tim for making money for taking advantage of saving children. To Tim.
Okay.